Good morning. Today is June 14th. The time is approximately 9:30 in the morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Board of County Commissioners here in Seminole County. For the invocation, we're going to have Father John Blewett from St. Stephen's Church, and then follow that will be the Pledge of Allegiance from Mr. Applegate. Father John, all stand, please.
Good and gracious God, a new day dawns for us, and with it comes another opportunity to do your will and your work in our world, in our community, which means that to the best of our ability, with the gifts you've given us, we will strive to leave this world a better place than when we came into it. We pray in a special way today that Ashley Dobbins will be at peace with the Lord, and we pray for her family. We pray also for our leaders and staff. Watch over our children, teachers, and parents. Protect our medical personnel and all our first responders. Be with the people of Ukraine in a special way as they fight for justice and freedom. We ask this, keep us healthy and safe and well, this day and always. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen.
In honor of our great nation and our great flag, and for the men and women who have served our nation both in war and in peace, I'm honored to lead in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Father John. Thank you, Mr. Applegate. Mr. Applegate?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Father Blewett mentioned, Ashley Dobbins, who he asked for prayers for, passed away over the weekend. Ashley was a valued member of the Development Services team. She was promoted recently to Project Coordinator in the Planning and Development Division in January, where she was instrumental towards upgrading the E-Plan system. She also served as clerk to the Board of Adjustment, reviewed building permits for zoning compliance, and provided E-Plan training to new hires in the planning and building divisions throughout the county. She also implemented the review procedure for the new shoreline protection permit process within watershed management. She joined the county team in 2014 as a permit tech in the building division, and as noted, she was promoted several times in this short period of time. We want her daughter to know, we want Hope to know, that Ashley was greatly loved by her coworkers and was a dedicated public servant who loved working for the county and who was just tremendous in every position that she held. We want Hope to know that Ashley will always be remembered and how much Ashley was valued by her friends and co-workers, and she will be missed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Applegate. We're now going to move on to proclamations, awards, and presentation. First order of business for the presentation is the Business Spotlight.
Elevate Fun, an all-new family entertainment center concept coming to shopping malls across the United States, opened its first location in Sanford in December 2021. With Seminole County's largely family-oriented demographic, the county was a perfect fit. This flagship location, located at the Seminole Town Center Mall, ensures to elevate fun for all ages. Already visible from exit 94 on I-4, this attraction features more than 125,000 square feet, 2 floors of entertainment, and 141 employees. Attractions inside the new Elevate Fun Sanford include a multi-level go-kart track, an arcade with over 150 state-of-the-art and retro arcade games, 12 full-size bowling lanes, laser tag, interactive mini-golf, a ropes course, a full-service restaurant, and much more. The Sanford location is the first of many Elevate Fun locations, with plans to expand to Tampa and Jensen Beach next. Besides the obvious fun, Elevate Fun's goal is to reinvigorate the many distressed properties across the country, a number of which are in shopping malls and abandoned department stores. Welcome to Seminole County Elevate Fund.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Irma Stengman. I'm with the Economic Development Team. I'm here to introduce Keith Baldwin, the Director of Operations for Elevate Fund.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. I'm not sure if any questions or not, but we've been very, very happy with working in Seminole County, and the government here has been nothing but wonderful to work with, the permitting department, and everybody else as well. So we're happy to be part of the community, and we are expanding, but we're happy to be in Seminole County. And we had the choice of where to go to, Tampa or Sanford. Being in this area for about 12 years, I said we got to do Sanford first.
Well, thank you for that. We appreciate not just your business, but your spirit that you bring here to Seminole County. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Herr?
Yeah, as the district commissioner, I thank you for that decision. I have a question about your ropes course. Is that a bonding experience?
It is, and a team building. If you're scared of heights, you probably should not go up there. But it's a unique attraction we wanted to bring to the community. But if you're getting up there, you're committed.
Well, I'm committed, fellow commissioners.
I will happily honor and take all of you up there myself.
There we go.
Laser tag and go-karts, perfect.
Yeah, I was going to say go-karts. We'll challenge on go-karts.
Commissioner Lockhart?
What could possibly go wrong? So, which store is it that you're in?
I'm over all of them, but I'm
No,
based.
I'm sorry. Which department store did you take the place
We are in
of?
the old Sears.
The old Sears, okay. And I appreciate so much the timing of this because we were grappling with Father's Day ideas, and I think we just figured it out. So.
Father's
What
Race
could
Free.
possibly go wrong?
Okay.
Yeah, what could possibly go
Our
wrong?
promotion is Father's
I
Race Free.
did see a bar
with a
there
child.
too, you know.
What if the child is 25?
We'll deal with that. Well, 13 and over is probably our benchmark.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Thank you. Seriously, it looks like a lot of fun, and
Thank
I
you.
think it's a wonderful thing to bring to our community. We've had smaller versions that have popped up over the years, and it looks like you've hit on all of the cylinders there. So
We're trying,
we wish
and
you
we're
the
going to
best.
be adding axe throwing next.
Axe throwing. Oh, that's the best.
Oh, yeah. No, we're not challenging in that one, guys.
Oh, I think we're throwing that in.
And of course, they serve alcohol, right?
Yeah.
We have two
Before
bars.
the axe throwing.
Commissioner Constantine?
Yeah, thank you. Keith, right after you opened up, I gave you a call, but you've been so busy. I know that you probably had a tough time, but I wanted to thank you because you also did a guest opening, I believe, with the chamber and everything of that nature. So this is so much fun to have you here in town. I want to thank you. Being one that my father's restaurant was across the street from the old Little 500 go-karts, he used to allow me to run across 1792 and go over there and play all the time when I got bored in the restaurant. But I just want you to know that that closed recently. It's so nice to see that, we have something coming up right there in the Sanford Mall. And the other thing with all malls being redeveloped, if you will, redesigned, it's good to see a family-oriented type of business going in there that everyone can enjoy and attracts people into the mall.
Thank you. And that was our business model.
Lee, I got to ask you a question. When your dad was telling you to run across 1792, how old were you?
Yeah, I know. I was young.
I caught that, too.
It was a different era, folks, a different era. 1792 was a just a two-lane street.
Okay. Well, congratulations. Welcome to Seminole County. I'm sorry. Commissioner Zimbauer.
How do y'all handle the exhaust emissions on the go-karts?
We don't. They're lithium. They're batteries.
Nice.
Electric.
Yeah.
Nice. How fast are they?
Our cadets do 35, which is for the little people, and the adults do 45.
Okay.
45 mile an hour?
That is correct.
And we're allowed to go 45?
Yeah, depending on your
Inside.
skill set, but yes, absolutely.
Hey, let's do it.
Yeah, that's what I said. That's the challenge.
We should all go do it.
Yeah.
You all should.
Okay.
You're all
We'll set it up.
You're all officially invited.
I'm sure we'll post that to make sure it's a public meeting.
I don't think there's going to be too much.
We could do a
business to be
fundraiser
talking-
for the
Yeah, I don't
community
think
or
there's too much business to be
But
called
thank you,
there.
Keith. We
Thank-
appreciate you
thank
being a
you,
part of
Thank you,
Seminole
everyone.
County.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
Nice
Please
to
let
meet
us know if there's anything else you need.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, Keith.
Okay. Okay, the first proclamation
That would be scary.
will be from Commissioner Lockhart. Commissioner Lockhart?
Commissioners, it is my honor to move the following proclamation of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners proclaiming June 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth in Seminole County. Whereas our nation was conceived on July 4th, 1776, with the Declaration of Independence, the classic statement being, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." And whereas on January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln delivered the Emancipation Proclamation initiating the end of slavery across the United States. And whereas Juneteenth is often mentioned as our country's second Independence Day and is the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States. And whereas Juneteenth was originally celebrated in Texas on June 19, 1866, marking the first anniversary of the day that African Americans there first learned of the Emancipation Proclamation, more than 2 years after it was initially issued. And whereas, within a few years, African Americans were celebrating Juneteenth in other states, making it an annual tradition. And whereas today, Juneteenth commemorates African American freedom and emphasizes education and achievement. And whereas Juneteenth celebrations continue to grow within cities, counties, and organizations across the country, helping to encourage awareness, education, and appreciation of African American history and culture. And whereas on June 17, 2021, Juneteenth officially became the 11th federal holiday. And whereas on Juneteenth we celebrate the centuries of struggle, courage, and hope that have brought us to this time of progress and possibility. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners does hereby proclaim Sunday, June 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth Day in Seminole County and encourages all community members to observe this day with activities and ideas that celebrate freedom and justice for all people. Adopted this 14th day of June, 2022.
Second.
A motion second. Discussion. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner, you'd like to present it?
Yes, we have Marcus Gomes here, who's a lieutenant with our Seminole County Fire Department, who's going to, I believe, be accepting the proclamation. And if there's anybody else who would like to come down to commemorate this, that would be wonderful. So, thank you.
Just give us 1 minute till we all take our seats, please.
Good morning, everybody. For those that don't know me, Lieutenant Marcus Gomes, Seminole County Fire Department. Just wanted to, first of all, thank everybody for being here, and then also thank the Board of County Commissioners for doing this. This definitely was something that a large group of us back here that's been on the diversity team that was formed a couple years ago have been working hard on trying to get presented. So we thank everybody for doing this because it definitely is something to go and bring more awareness and education across the county, not just for the fire department, but for everybody all around, to kind of just bring up some of our history and what makes America great. I mean, we definitely do live in the greatest country in the world, and to go and be able to learn and see what actually makes us great is something that doesn't go on deaf ears. So we appreciate everybody for coming. We once again thank the commissioners for doing this, because this is something that just is going to keep empowering our county and keep us growing and keep us getting better. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Marcus.
The next proclamation will be presented by Commissioner Zimbauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask Mr. Alan Harris to come to the podium for just a moment and say a word of the importance and give a little overview before we read this proclamation. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Commissioner, Chairman, and the rest of the commissioners. Alan Harris, Chief Administrator for the Office of Emergency Management. We have a group of volunteers here today that play a critical role in emergency services and have for decades. The Amateur Radio Emergency Services in Lake Monroe Amateur Radio Society has provided voluntary support to provide critical, redundant communications from our critical facilities during every single hurricane. Prior to hurricane season, they go out to the emergency shelters provided in the schools and make sure that our antennas, repeaters are working. This partnership between Seminole County and these volunteer amateur radio operators is extraordinary. During Hurricane Michael up in the Panhandle, cellular towers were completely destroyed. 800 megahertz radio systems were down. Fire departments, law enforcement couldn't communicate with each other. The communication, and I happen to be working at the State Emergency Operations Center where they made me the Emergency Services Branch Chief, and the reason, the wonderful thing that happened during that whole operation is the amateur radio operators. The amateur radio operators, which were able to provide communication for our first responders and our first responders that responded out to the Panhandle to support, but from also hospitals, emergency shelters, so that us in Tallahassee, we knew what was going on, and we knew knew when and where to send urban search and rescue teams. Thankfully, knock on wood, we have not had a Category 4 or 5 hurricane here in Seminole County, but certainly have been threatened by Hurricane Dorian, and certainly it can occur. So I just wanted, on behalf of the residents of Seminole County, if I can do that, the staff of Seminole County, and certainly the Emergency Management Office of Seminole County, thank those in the Amateur Radio Emergency Services Club, Lake Monroe Amateur Radio Operators, for their volunteer service, and I'll let you read the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Well, it's my pleasure, with a great deal of gratitude for those people that take their own personal time, their own personal investments to do this on behalf of the community when it's in most need. The proclamation of Seminole County Board of County Commissioners proclaiming June 25, 2022 as ARRL Ham Radio Field Day in Seminole County. Whereas the American Radio Relay League was founded in 1914 by Hiram Percy Maxim, and whereas the National Association for Amateur Radio in the United States, ARRL, supports the awareness and growth of amateur radio worldwide. And whereas ARRL advocates for meaningful access to the radio spectrum, strives for every member to get involved, get active, and get on the air, encourages radio experimentation, and through its members advances radio technology and education. And whereas ARRL organizes and trains volunteers to serve their communities by providing public service and emergency communications. And whereas ARRL has a proud history of achievement as a standard bearer in amateur affairs. And whereas ARRL's underpinnings as amateur radio's witness, partner, and forum are defined by 5 pillars: public service, advocacy, education, technology, and membership. And whereas AARRL Field Day is the most popular on-the-air event held annually in the United States and Canada, held on the 4th weekend of June, more than 35,000 radio amateurs gather with their clubs, groups, or simply with friends to operate from remote locations. And whereas on Field Day, hams throughout North America will set up temporary transmitting stations in public places to demonstrate ham radio's science, skill, and service to our communities and to our nation. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners hereby proclaims June 25, 22 as ARRL Ham Radio Field Day in Seminole County, adopted this 14th day of June, 2022.
Second.
A motion, second. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
And today we have Richard Fisher, President of Lake Monroe Amateur Radio Society, here to accept the proclamation. Mr. Fisher? And please, if you don't like to say a few words. Yes, indeed.
Richard?
Good morning, Commissioner. I'm delighted to be here. Richard Fisher, and I do hold an amateur radio license. My call sign is WA3SXX. I'm the president of Lake Monroe Amateur Radio Society. Our club has a call sign N4EH. These are issued by the Federal Communications Commission. And accepting for the club, all of us have to pass a test of competency, and mine goes back to 1972. I'm an avid Morse code operator, and I like to keep 100-year-old technology alive in this regard. Now, as you know, technology is advancing, and so is our club. We can communicate digitally across the airwaves. We can make connection with Windows, quite a lot of things to do. Our club is growing, and we're expecting this year to have one of our best and biggest field day events ever, in that we're going to partner with another large club, Orlando Amateur Radio Club. They're based out of Orange County, and we're going to be competing on the air to see how many contacts we can make. This is a wonderful thing to do. We get together annually. It's a very big event for demonstrating the ability to set up and operate in an emergency situation. We have a lot of fun, too. That's probably a very big thing about this. There are about 700,000 hams licensed radio amateurs, and as you mentioned, about 35,000 are expected to be operating. Now, our club, we are a special services club affiliated with ARL, and we do a whole lot more than just like to get together and operate. For example, we do teach-ins in the local schools. We've done this in elementary schools and middle schools. We go in and show that amateur radio operators can speak with astronauts aboard the ISS. We've done this before. We have about 10 minutes to speak live with the astronauts as they're flying over. I like to teach Morse code. One of our directors is big in satellite communications, and the kids just seem to really take to this. So if I can answer any questions, I'd love to do so. We just have a great time, and it's a wonderful thing. And by the way, we're also supported by ARES here locally. They're with me today. They perform a very valuable service to the community, and service to the community and community-oriented is much of what we're all about. May I answer any questions?
Commissioners? Commissioner Zimbauer? Anybody?
I'm good.
Commissioner Lockhart?
Since you mentioned teach-in at schools, is the younger generation coming up, and do you have many students that are deciding that this is something that they want to take on as a hobby, or is it just sort of a neat thing that they learn in school and then they move on? I'm curious about they really picking
We
it
think
up.
it's probably a neat thing that can move on, but let me tell you what I experienced. One of our members will put together a little pamphlet of Morse code characters. I had a young lady, she had to be 10 years old, come up, take this from me, just look at it, and I have a Morse code key set up and sent her name perfectly in Morse code. So we're hopeful that the exposure we're giving them is going to let them move ahead. Now, we all know that the children are very, very enamored with and stay quite close to their telephones and the screens and everything else. So we're always looking. It's a challenge to us on the board of directors and with the radio clubs, too, to capture their interest and hopefully bring this along. We do have a young man with our radio club who sat down and made over 200 contacts on the radio bands just because he loves to do so. So there are some that really take up and go with it, and we're hoping for more. We're striving for this.
That's wonderful. It looks like it's an art that we don't want to lose.
It is, yes.
Richard, your field day, what location will you be at?
Oh, I'd like to invite everybody to come out to Central Winds Park, and this is over in Winter Springs. There's a little field. We go down there, we hold this event there, we have for years now, set up in the field with numerous stations and antennas that are very large, they can be. And that's what we're going to do. We'll be setting up and be ready to operate beginning at 2 o'clock Saturday. This is a 24-hour operation. As a matter of fact, one of our members is a very avid woodworker and metal worker, and he manufactures a little mascot that we call the Order of the Owls. And if we can convince you to stay all through the night, you may be inducted into the Order of the Owls, and we'll have the coveted little device to keep with you as a memento.
Thank you, sir.
Great.
This is just wonderful. I'd like to just express my appreciation. This is so much to the meaning to our club and also for ham radio. Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate all your help. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr.
We
Zimbo.
perhaps may want to recognize elected officials in the audience. We got Commissioner Cannon from Winter Springs, which is also involved with the ham radio folks as well.
Commissioner?
I'll keep it very brief, but Lake Monroe Amateur Radio Society works hand in glove with Winter Springs Police Department, and we provide and have for decades. We assist with their July 4th celebration, the Christmas parade, the hometown harvest, and we set up an auxiliary emergency operation radio station during the hurricane in the city's EOC. And we really have been reaching out for STEM education in the schools. The biggest event we did was a couple years ago when we did this live link up with the satellites at Indian Trail Middle School. And so we really want to get out and promote STEM for young men and young women, and they really do take to it. And it's a good vehicle. It's a different way to talk about physics and math and earth sciences from a little different perspective, not a textbook perspective. And you can kind of see the light bulbs going on when we do that, and we enjoy it very much. Thank you for recognizing us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for hosting it in your park. Okay, we're now going to move on to consent agenda. Pursuant to Florida law, the public has the right to be heard on all propositions except for when the Board of County Commissioners is acting in ministerial or emergency matters or conducting a meeting exempt from Section 286.011 Florida statute. The public comment time on issues will be 3 minutes for individuals, 6 minutes for groups. The right to be heard on quasi-judicial hearing is governed by Florida law. The public will be provided the opportunity to be heard on non-agenda items at the end of this meeting, which will be in the morning. Proper decorum will be observed. We'll now go on to consent agenda. Mr. Applegate, any changes?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any items that a board member would like to remove from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, just 4, if you could, please.
Commissioner Constantine?
4?
4?
Yes.
Okay. Any other items? Commissioner Zimbo?
I'm ready to move a motion to approve items 5 through 27 and item 28.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. We'll now go on to item number 4. Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you very much. And this is not about this specific request or approval, and I will make the motion for approval after this, unless someone else beats me to it, but I figured you might. But this is about the ARP dollars. I think all of us probably get questions all the time. We've been talking about this, so I just wanted Tricia to kind of update us as to where we are on that, the ARPA dollars, since we get one like every meeting now.
Sure. For the record, Tricia Johnson, Deputy County Manager. I will also share with you that since we've been sharing responsibilities lately, I've asked Steve Fussell to serve as the project manager for various ARPA activities to assist with that process. So you may see his name on some of our communications, and he's been a wonderful addition to our team. With respect to ARPA, we usually do an update for the board, and what we're doing, we have a couple of updates coming up regarding specific efforts, mental health, paramedicine. So we haven't done a holistic update for you in a couple of months. So that's certainly something we can schedule or just do some one-off briefings and updates. We have a few items coming to the board in upcoming agendas related to not-for-profit agreements that have been approved and city agreements that we're still ironing out with a couple of our cities, and then, of course, Seminole State today. What we really need to focus on with you are some of those larger efforts, for example, community facilities and, again, mental health and attainable housing efforts that are not specifically designated, the funds are not specifically designated beyond that larger category. So that's why we're bringing some of these individual departments to come and talk to the board about recommendations to proceed with those funding measures. So I don't know, sir, if you have a specific question, that's kind of a general overview, but we can certainly send an electronic communication with a breakdown of spending and where we are, or do a briefing for the board at a meeting, or do individual briefings, whatever your preference may be.
Thank you, Tricia. I think my question, Mr. Chairman, is more in the line of, you know, we listed a number of different categories and a number of different groups, and so the anticipation has been building in the community. And when I sometimes request, you know, where this is or that is, you or the staff tell me you're still waiting on something for them, but when they call me up, they said, when am I getting my money? You know, we've done everything.
Sure.
So the question is kind of like, where are we as far as those ARPA dollars when it comes to the not-for-profits, and what can we expect?
It varies from not-for-profit to not-for-profit. When the board approved general funding amounts for some specific not-for-profits earlier this year, we then went back to those not-for-profits and shared with them the board's direction. Some of them were required to tighten up their scope, make some modifications based on the approved funding amount. That has proven to take a little longer than we originally anticipated, because ARPA guidelines are very clear what we can and cannot spend the money on, and so we've had to spend some time communicating that with them about that. That's why Steve Fussell was brought in, because he is very tenacious in that way. So again, we have a couple that are anticipated to come to the board on June 28th. We've had legal working on those agreements, and I know our community services team is reviewing them as well. And then a couple more that actually we aren't providing them ARPA dollars until they spend other dollars that they have been allocated through the Community Services Department. We'd like for them to spend that amount down before we proceed with additional money. So each not-for-profit's in a different place. It depends on which one.
So, Ms. Johnson, again, follow up, instead of, you know, when they come to us and they ask us, where's our money, we should say, go talk to Tricia Johnson.
You can send them to me, or you can send them to Steve Fussell, or both of us, and we'll tag team. Steve is the keeper of the information, but I'm certainly happy to be of assistance as well.
I wanted to make sure that they understand that, because too often they're trying to kind of like,
yes,
well, we were told we were going to get our money, you know, playing against each other.
Certainly, and we want to ensure everyone gets the funding the board has approved, but there are specific things we have to follow, and I think we've had to re-educate them on that.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner Herr.
Just a process comment, and that is that I really do think if we're going to manage this consistently, because I'm not getting phone calls, to be clear, but when you bump into somebody in the community, there's certainly a lobbying opportunity. And so I think the answer is that we're sending them to Steve, not sending them to Tricia. We have senior staff that's stretched pretty thin, and we're not slowing the roll on any of the projects that we expect to happen for the community, and therefore we ought to be a little more streamlined in our approach. I think that will help the entire organization.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else?
Agreed.
Commissioner Constantine?
Well, I agree with you in principle. I just want to make, again, we don't want to sit there and start, I always like to go to the top and then let them decide who might address that. That's all I was trying to get there with Tricia.
So you're giving us direction from the top that you would like it to go to Steve?
I think the best, to keep it consistent, to send it to Steve Fussell is
Good.
best.
Okay.
So that would be my recommendation.
Perfect.
Any other comments? Direction for the board with a motion.
Motion to approve item number 4 as presented.
Second.
A motion second. Any further discussion? Any written requests?
No, sir.
Okay, seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, pose like sign, motion passes. Thank you. We've already approved item number 28, so we're going to move on to 29. I'd like to ask the county manager, is there anything else before we have staff? But before we have staff, I'd like to ask Commissioner Lockhart, since she's been working very diligently on this, if there's any additional comments, if you don't mind, Commissioner Lockhart.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And actually, Commissioner Delary and I were both out in the East Altamont-Wynwood community this last weekend for a graduation celebration, and there were a lot of students and parents and family members out there celebrating pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, 8th graders, 12th graders, and those that graduated from high school in this community this last weekend. And it was,
Don't forget the fourth grader.
there was a 4th grader?
I thought it was a fourth grader.
Okay, well, he gets to graduate and go to 5th grade. So, so the exciting thing about that opportunity for both of us to be there is that we were able to give a very brief update on this project to those who were there at that event, and the fact that we would be talking about this here today. So this is a long process. Shout out to our consultant, to Renaissance Planning, to our planning team. They've been amazing. This has been a long process. As you all know, this started actually when I was chairman of the school board trying to sell the county commission a building. And then I got to come to the county commission and buy the building I was trying to sell. It actually worked out quite well. The community has had an incredible amount of input. We've had lots of meetings. This is just hopefully getting to a place where we can start to see some really good movement. Also, don't want to forget the fact that some of the programming that we're hoping to see happen at Rosenwald was originally envisioned to happen at the Lily H. Green Community Center. So this community has had a community center. It's been somewhat repurposed. So this has tremendous possibilities for them to really have a hub that they had hoped to have for many years on. So with that, I'll turn it over to our team. And
Before we turn it over,
and I left my pom-poms at home, by the way, just so you know.
Before we turn it over to the team, Mr. Applegate, you have any additional comments?
Just that I know how hard Commissioner Lockhart has worked on this over the years and how important it is to all of you, and especially to the Commissioner, and how well she's worked with staff. And it's exciting, so I'm going to turn it over as well to Rebecca.
Good morning. For the record, Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director. As Commissioner Lockhart stated, this is the final recommendations for the redevelopment of the Rosenwald School. Our consultant, David Nelson, is here to present those final strategic recommendations and receive final input and feedback from the board as well as the public. I just wanted to note, as Commissioner Lockhart did, this is the first step in a long-range project. And as you'll note from the study, staff and the consultant listed we've identified approximately 41 task steps that need to occur to ultimately bring the redevelopment of the Rosenwald School to fruition. So this really is the first step in the process, and we're excited for the project, but there's a lot more to do. And with that, I will turn it over to David.
David Nelson, Renaissance Planning, Mr. Commissioner, Chairman. Commissioners, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. Commissioner Lockhart, you said everything I was going to say, so I'm leaving now. These recommendations are like a storyboard. I kind of, look at it like that, and they represent the input and the guidance that this board has given us. It tells us where this site is and where we want it to go, and it represents the work of many staff departments, a lot of background, a lot of history that I wasn't familiar with that I got filled in with. It represents a lot of my legwork, on the site, but most importantly, these recommendations represent the aspirations of the community. And I am thankful for all the people that took the time to call me and talk about this project, to offer their services, their sweat equity in this as it moves forward. I appreciate the people that showed up at the community meetings, that took their time to talk with us, to mark up maps, to do surveys. These recommendations represent, the community and what they want. And these recommendations are an action plan to give to the county to take this project from a concept to a reality. And I know there are a lot of people, myself included, who are excited about seeing that transformation. And like you have mentioned and Rebecca's mentioned, there's a lot of intermittent steps in this, but it's exciting to start seeing this move forward. And so I'd like to do just a quick recap. I hope you had the opportunity to glance through my report, which is much more detailed. Which one of these?
How many hundreds of pages is it for those at home?
It's maybe only 100 with the appendices. I spared you the 400-page report that I thought about adding as background in it.
I think we got it.
Yeah.
Trust me, I'm working this a long time.
Okay. Here we go. So I think we all know what the goals of this project are. The biggest part of this project, as I said, this is the community's project. And we tried to engage people in many ways. Again, like I said, it was a lot of phone calls, it was a lot of meeting with people. But we had 3 workshops on this project. The first one was held in May of 2021, where we brainstormed potential services and facilities for Rosenwald. Then we held a second workshop in December 2021, where we prioritized these services and facilities, as well as looked at some general site concepts. And then we held our last workshop in April of this year, where we reviewed and commented on the final recommendations, and I got that last input from the community on what we were going to present. So in the process of this, as we started looking at what we wanted to do on this site, we really needed to look at what can we save on this site. And there was a lot of studies done from engineering perspectives on how this site has aged over time, and that influenced a lot of what we did. We wanted to look at what were the costs for renovation versus to bring it up to the current building standards versus straight new construction. What's the benefit of one to the other? And then what services would benefit most from new construction and new technologies to really, make this a high-tech hub for the community. And so as we started looking at the different concepts, we looked at 3 different general concepts. One was what we called the historic concept, and that was where we keep all the existing buildings. We looked at a modern concept where we contemplated demolishing everything on site and starting fresh. And then we looked at what we called the hybrid concept, which would be keeping some of the buildings, but then also doing some new construction. And this is the hybrid concept is what we ultimately ended up going with. And so there were a number of reasons we went with the hybrid concept, but it connects by keeping some existing buildings. We're connecting with the past. We're integrating some of the architecture, some of the components of the old Rosenwald schools, but we're also providing the opportunity for new state-of-the-art facilities that gives the community the most efficient use of monies, of technology, and creating opportunities for public-private partnerships on the site. And so quickly, I'll get into the recommendations. From policy and community elements, we recognize that there's going to have to be some changes to zoning and future land use to turn this site from a school to a community center. And then we also looked at community recommendations going beyond Rosenwald site itself. We want to make sure people can get to the site. So we started looking at, as people are walking or biking, how do we make sure they have safe access to the site? So we started making recommendations for things like pedestrian scale lighting, sidewalks, and really looking at reinforcing the way people are going to get there, the way they're also going to get to the Lily Green Community Center, and also to Fire Station number 11 as it opens, as kind of this triangulation of a community core. We recommend keeping 3 of the existing buildings. Building 1, which is the cafeteria, which was the old cafeteria, which could be repurposed to a culinary school and a kitchen, as well as classrooms. Building 2, which was the principal's office, can be repurposed as a sheriff's department substation, the community resource officers. And then Building 5, which we're looking at taking that and converting that to a heritage center and a museum. And then with that, we'd be looking at new construction. And as we looked at other community centers in the area, we looked at, if you're looking at about 12,000 square feet, we feel that that provides a comparable size that not only works on the site, but that can provide all of the services that the people said they wanted. We would have a covered entrance that would connect into the front of Rosenwald where the buses used to let people off. And you'd have a covered entrance going into the community center, lobby area, classrooms, a computer lab, meeting rooms and a conference center, and then a large community room that could seat 250, 300 people for larger events that the community center was really needed here, from weddings, graduations, repasts, celebrations of any kind. And then there'd also be a covered deck and patio spaces that would be overlooking the lake to take advantage of that amenity. And then one of the things we want to make sure is, as we're talking about the hybrid concept of bridging the past to the future, as we build the new community center, we want to include some of those original Rosenwald architectural features, such as the metal roofing, large windows, high ceilings, covered porches, light colors, just really as a nod and a respect for that past of the Rosenwald program. The grounds, we want to make that an activity center as well, kind of becoming an overflow and an expansion of the community center. A trail walking loop, a fishing dock, a picnic space, lawn area for play and for events, shaded seating areas, garden plots for urban farming, possibility of hydroponics on the lake or beekeeping, and then plazas and memorial gardens, art installations, really a place to help the community express themselves, to educate people. And then also, we'd like to turn the existing stormwater facility into an asset, turn it from a dry detention to a wet pond with a fountain in it. I don't necessarily need to go over this programming, but when we sized the community center to this 12,000 square feet, we came up with 1 classroom, 1 computer lab, 5 offices, and a conference room. And what that does is we took all the different programs that the community told us they'd like to see here. And we started doing, kind of putting a matrix into a program and started looking at, okay, if we started doing, education blocks of an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, how many people could we fit in there? And so as we went through the potential services, we found that rotating them in this size of 12,000 square feet plus or minus, we can have 15, 20, 25 providers in some of these, not only in classroom situations, but in offices where there's more private, confidential meeting space. So we felt we had a good size here based on what people told us that they wanted. Again, 5 offices for individual private meetings. We broke this down. You could have 1 office for medical dental, 1 for mental behavioral, 1 office for personal services, 1 for workforce and employment, and another for miscellaneous. Again, well, all we're trying to do is, we're not trying to put a program, but we're trying to demonstrate that there is the space for all these rotating providers to come in and take care of the needs that the community has said. And so this comes up, if you could add, have day and evening slots and up to 25 time slots per week per room. That's a lot of providers that you could get in there. And so then we came up with kind of a concept plan of how this could lay out on the site. You can see the 3 existing buildings along the front of the site. We tie it together with a covered walkway with the new community center, large lawn area, farming areas with the urban plots, more formalized lawn area, and then the opportunity on the west side if you wanted to look at some affordable housing, whether it's senior housing, whether it's just general affordable housing. But we just wanted to demonstrate that within this site there is room to put all this program that the community has indicated they'd like to see. And then this was just a view on the left of the site as it is now, and on the right we superimposed what a community center could look like in there, so you can see it's in scale with the school, with the site. It's not going to take over the site. It's well incorporated in the site. And as Rebecca said, and as Commissioner Lockhart said, there's a lot of steps that need to be done with this. It goes from planning and an RFP for a master developer on to looking at the renovation of the buildings and the infrastructure, to the site work, demolition and recycling, adding new infrastructure, extending utilities, doing the outdoor elements, doing the new construction. This is not something that's going to happen overnight, but I think that what we've laid out in our recommendations is a good game plan for the county to start working on this on multiple fronts and moving this forward. And then other project considerations, we've got to look at, as you create these new facilities, you need management and staffing. What can be done at the Rosenwald Community Center and what can be done at the Lily Green Community Center. We want to look at the community infrastructure enhancements. You've obviously got to look at budgeting, grants and other funding resources. And then something that we've heard a lot about, and as I mentioned earlier, is the volunteerism, the mentoring, the apprenticeships, the champions of this project. I go away, but there's other people that are going to be carrying this forward, that are going to be coming to you and asking you about it. There are groups that want to be involved with this from a programming standpoint, groups that do construction apprenticeships that want to be part of this to help with whether it's the demolition, whether it's the construction. There's so many different avenues in this where people can get involved and take part in their community and take ownership in what's being done. It's very exciting. And so then the next steps, I'm presenting this document to you today. I'm making this handoff to the county. Staff will develop an RFP. for the master development, and then, parallel to that, they'll start looking at site assessments and start beginning the design work. And as I said, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but there's a lot of different tracks that can go forward at the same time. And I think you can start seeing things open up incrementally on this project. The existing buildings can start being put to use while the community center is being built, for instance. So we want people to start seeing incremental project progress on this. And I think that is my presentation. I'd like to open it up to any questions anyone has, and I appreciate the opportunity to have worked on this project.
Thank you. Questions from the board before we go to the public? Commissioner Herr.
Just and I think this will come out in the next phases, but I think it's a little bit misleading to talk about medical and dental services being provided out of an office. They typically require all sorts of other infrastructure, including bathrooms, et cetera. So I just want to be cognizant of the fact that that will all come later, and that we need to be aware of the fact that 12,000 square feet may not facilitate all that and more.
And I agree that there's a lot of specialized things in medical dental that, you could include some of that in the community center, obviously with the updated technology. I don't necessarily, see a new crown being put in there, but I would see that as being a place where you can have medical and dental consultation that, that may move people forward to other facilities, but it's something that, that we definitely heard that the community would like to have those types of services, whatever they turn out to be.
Thank you. Commissioner Lockhart.
I think Rebecca has.
Good morning again. For the record, Rebecca Hammock. Just to clarify, the intent was not to provide the actual medical or dental services at the location, but made me coordinate where someone could go to get those done, or if there was some kind of assistance with payment and that type of thing. And that's, again, like David stated, these are just examples of programs. Ultimately, once we get to the next steps and the next phases, then we can determine what programs can actually be located in the community center.
Commissioner Lockhart.
I think what we found is that so many community partners came forward wanting to be able to participate in some way. True Health, the health department, a lot of different agencies. And so when you have a bunch of people wanting to participate and they're saying, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, you kind of don't want to tell them, no, you can't, we won't have room for that. We're going to keep everybody involved in the conversation and continue until we get further down the road and people actually put their money where their mouth is. Right?
Right. My concern wasn't what we're doing. My concern was the representation that we're going to have medical and dental in an office. And so just clarifying that it's the idea of supporting care that may be provided somewhere else through a facilitator.
Anyone else? The only comments that I would have would be, Rebecca, when we develop the RFP, I think we should also be discussing what type of delivery methods. Is it going to be a hard bid, seam at risk, design build? I think it's important that we actually, not today, but as you develop those, that we actually talk about the staff, figure out what delivery method that they prefer, or we all prefer. Commissioner Lockhart?
Well, I think that in addition to that, expanding on that a little bit further, we also will need to decide, and I know there are a lot of members from the community here, and I do want to hear from them, but something that we need to decide is, will the housing component be a different parcel? Are we keeping this all one big parcel as a PD? How exactly are we going to make all of that work, the details of the development? Because it may be that we want to do part of it as a design build, part of it as a CM at risk. You might want to do some of the remodeling differently than how you would build the brand new community building. So I think there probably isn't one answer at this point yet.
And that's what I'm trying to get to, that I want to have direction from staff during the next steps, how that's all going to get laid out.
So my intention was, and then of course, if I can get direction from the board on this, if this is how you would like for us to proceed, my intention was when we did the scope of work that we could outline those options and then evaluate the responses based on those options, because there may be some private partners that would prefer to do a land lease or to actually purchase the property. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we included in the scope of work is how the funding structure would work, like what the county, the public partner, the county would be responsible for, and what the private partner would be responsible for.
Commissioner Zimbauer?
Exactly correct. We had a work session on this 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and we covered, and we had many of the private industry come in and weigh in and give us their input and so forth. So I would agree. I think this is going to be a hybrid model, if you will, as far as partners with the county and so forth on the housing aspect versus the other community aspect. And so my expectation would be is, as we move forward, that staff would give us all those options for us to ultimately make a decision and as what private entities we may or what delivery methods would move forward through. And I think we've got a lot of steps to get there yet.
Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you. And yes, we did have a work session where people brought in proposals, which is one of the reasons we came back to this. And we've been talking about this for more than 4 years, and I certainly do, thank Commissioner Lockhart for working with the community. I think all of us are very excited about this. But part of this, and I was very pleased to see this, as we, both in the meetings that we attended, that I attended with you on one of the workshops, but we have incorporated everything that we had talked about many, many years ago, like a sheriff's component, like child care and education component, like health care in some form or fashion, consulting in that community room, senior living, and certainly a private-public partnership. I think that gives us the opportunity to have some dollars available early on that we can then use for the rest of the project. So I think that, and certainly we all want to have a component of affordable housing and some sort of a senior living and things of that nature.
Thank you. Mr. Applegate?
To follow up with what Rebecca said, that obviously this is step number one in what's going to be a great number of steps. And the potential here is so exciting that you all have a chance, and with staff and with the community, to establish something that could really be a model for great things in the future. So we're going to work very hard, and we'll report back on the next steps and the next options, and for your consideration, whether it be a work session or, but we can proceed on. So, Rebecca?
Sure. What I was going to suggest, if it's acceptable to the board, is we could draft the scope of work and then bring that back to the board and discuss it at a work session or at a meeting, and just make sure that the scope of work outlines everything that you want included, and we'll solicit the responses and get the answers that you would like, and then before we actually issue it to the public.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Okay.
At this time, we'll hear from the public. Shani, who do we have written?
Frank Welts.
Again, if you could, when you come to the podium, please give your name and address, and at that time, the 3 minutes will start.
Good morning. Frank Wells, CEO of Housed, your Central Florida Regional Housing Trust, 800 North Magnolia Avenue, Orlando. Mr. Chair, commissioners, staff, community members, it's a pleasure to be with you here today. I was here with you almost 2 years ago when we were talking about a proposal for the Rosenwald School site. Probably many of you remember. We have remained engaged on this project ever since. We attend the monthly meetings of the East Altamont Community Association, for instance, as recently as last night. I've met with several of you to discuss this project, met with David and the Renaissance team, attended all of the community meetings that went into this process. I just want to urge you, what we hear from the community over and over again is can something please happen soon? We hear a lot of urgency around not having yet another planning process that turns into another planning process, that turns into more planning. The community is very frustrated, having had a number of studies, a number of plans over the years, and not seen anything happen. And so I just want to convey my sense of those thoughts to you all today to encourage you to move forward with something quickly. We don't need a plan for the entire site all at once to bring the whole thing to completion when it might be possible to move forward with renovations on a building or two that would give the community something to see some real concrete progress. How quickly could we make something happen on that site and really show some progress with this Rosenwald School? Because, as you all have said, there's so much opportunity here. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next.
No more speakers.
Okay, there's the end of the speaker forums. Anyone else in the public like to address the board on this item? Can you please come to the front? Is there anyone else in the public that'd like to speak? Please submit your forms to Shaney.
Good morning. My name is Christine Watkins. I reside at 639 Lake Mobile Drive, Altamont Springs, and I am president of South Seminole Community Association for Progress. Back in October 10th, 2018, I sent Mr. Bennett Lloyd, who is with the Historic Society for Seminole County, I sent him an email because as a subcommittee member, we worked on not only the Wynwood historical marker, but we also worked on Rosenwald markers. And the thing about it is, the bottom line, both were approved. Nonetheless, I have not heard the status of the Rosenwald marker. Rosenwald was granted a marker by the county to be erected on the Rosenwald property. But let me take that a step back. It was granted, maybe not right on the Rosenwald property, but that was the assumption at the time. But I was told, because I've called several times to the society to ask where the marker is. And the marker was approved, paid for, and the marker now for Rosenwald is in the Historical Society, I'm told, in the closet or in the back room. So my question is, will the Rosenwald marker be erected on the property?
Anything else you'd like to discuss before we get to your questions?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Applegate, I just want to make sure, does staff have any update on the Rosenwald marker?
I don't at this point. I'll turn it over to Commissioner Lockhart.
Just trying to get as much information to the board.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lockhart?
So let me tell you what I know about the marker, because I was chairman of the school board when we were told that a marker was going to be placed on school board property, and we were not permitted or given the courtesy of knowing what the marker was going to say. We were just told that it was going to be erected. So this was 6 years ago-ish. At that time, school board staff, the superintendent, and others reached out to Seminole County, the museum staff, to talk about the marker, and some of the language that was on it, frankly, wasn't language that that the school board or the community would have maybe thought was appropriate. It didn't give maybe the best light of some of the wonderful things that had occurred on that property. So the school board at the time asked that the county please, at least if you're going to put a marker on property that doesn't belong to you, talk to the property owner about what it's going to say and give us an opportunity. At that time, I was us, an opportunity to have input into the language of the marker. Since that time, of course, the marker was put on hold, waiting for either some new language to be devised And in the meantime, the property has now changed hands. It's not owned by the school board anymore. It's owned by the county. So the marker in its original form, I do believe, is in storage at the museum somewhere. And if the county would like to look at the language and perhaps modify the language and erect a marker that might be more appropriate for the community, I certainly would be supportive of that. But that is what I know about the history of the marker.
Okay. From my knowledge, Mr. Applegate, Commissioner is correct. The marker has been already created. It is in storage somewhere. But if you can get us the text of it, and give us an update from the staff, I think that'd be appropriate.
Absolutely.
Any objection to that? Commissioner Zimbauer?
I would just ask that, and I agree with all of that, but I think what I'm hearing is some of the text was not appropriate for.
I have no idea.
My point being is, at this juncture, I think we should include the community in the vetting process of that, at least to have input with what goes on that historic marker. And so if staff could facilitate that with the text that's currently on there and find out if it's appropriate. We certainly want to do what's best for the community. We want to memorialize history appropriately. So I would just ask that we include the community as part of that discussion of what we ultimately do.
Okay. Commissioner Lockhart?
There was a lot of email dialogue between the county manager at the time and the superintendent at the time.
And I was just going to say, I'll try and catch up on all that. I will have staff work with the appropriate members of the public, and we'll get that moving as fast as possible.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? We'll get to the information, Christine. Next,
Irvin Simpson.
Mr. Simpson.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
One of the sentiments that I just want to leave
Excuse me, just point of order. Just
I'm sorry,
give it your
Irvin
name.
Simpson, 2091 South Ronald Reagan Boulevard.
Thank you.
I'm the president of East Altamont Association, and don't want to beat a dead horse, but emphasize on Mr. Wells' comment. The biggest thing is, from the last meeting we had, everybody's excited about the project. However, when we say we're excited about the project, you want the project, but it's going to take 3 to 5 years to get started. That is where the community, to me, is having a difficult understanding. I understand there's a ton of steps need to be done prior to however it's going to get done in getting this started. But if we can get more meetings, more FaceTime with you, Commissioner, if it's going to get started sooner than 3 to 5, because that's the last thing we heard is 3 to 5 years. If it's going to happen prior to that, and like Mr. Wells emphasized, there's different areas that can get started, that's a big help. And continuing to build relationships with the community, with you guys, with the sheriff department, the more communication we have, the more open dialogue and face-to-face time, I think will greatly help and help push this project along and keep the community not feeling like we're getting pushed out. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson.
I would imagine that once staff looks at this and once we approve and accept the direction that our staff will put together, not just the development of the RFP, but what they have up there, but also a timeline. And with that timeline, I'm sure that they'll be able to articulate to us what can be the short term and what's long term.
Yes, sir.
So,
And I think there's locations in the community that, at a moment's notice, that the community can rally together and do a FaceTime and hear what's the updates at any time.
we're not trying to drag it on forever. We're not.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Could we have the county manager address the 3 to 5 year start time? I've not
I've not heard that either.
I have
but
not.
That's
So
why I'm asking
could we
for.
address that?
That's why I'm asking
I
for a
think that's
timeline.
just what they think.
That's really, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One, that's really the first that I've heard that that's a definite timeline. I'm assuming, I just got done saying a few minutes ago, as interim county manager, this is exciting, and we need to move as fast as possible on this, and I think that's the plan. And again, I think Rebecca's coming down to help with that, but I can tell you that all of you have envisioned that the community is going to be a big part of this, so
Sure. Good morning again. For the record, Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director. We're starting on it now. the first step is the scope of work. I think the 3 to 5 year time frame may have come from just a generalized, the whole process to bring it to fruition, to finish construction, can be anywhere from 3 to 5 years. And of course, that's just an estimated time frame. We really don't know until we get further into the process. And that was just simply to be able to give the community some kind of expectation that this is going to be a long-term project and will take, some time to actually see the finished product in the redevelopment of the school. So, but of course, we are starting now. We're not starting in 3 to 5 years.
That's why I think it's also important that when you bring this back, that we actually see a proposed timeline.
We can do that, yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Herr?
I think the challenge with regard to some of the projects, not just this one, but some of the projects that we take on, is that we speak in master planner language, and I use we loosely because I don't yet. Hopefully, I never will.
Oh, you do? Yes.
The notion of communicating this so that the average bear can understand it is super important. And so I think we ought to be looking at the way we are communicating, not just this one, but most community projects is important, because I do think it's exceptionally challenging for the community members that are rallying behind this to continue to go to your constituents, who are also our constituents, and defend that there's not a bulldozer on the property yet. But we kind of need to know what's under the property before we do the bulldozer thing. But people don't speak like that. We don't think like that. And so I think there's a communication gap that happens that we can maybe seal up and improve our processes around communication in general.
Thank you. Commissioner Zimbauer?
Along those same lines as Commissioner Herr, as many of you know, I've often said it can't move quick enough. And I think that's what the community's expectations are. The private sector often can make things happen pretty quickly. I've learned now, being in government on my 4th year, that it doesn't happen that way in government. There's a lot of T's that got to be crossed and a lot of I's that got to be dotted and a lot of processes that have to take place. I think my sense is, from the original work sessions, that this whole commission is committed to trying to bring this to fruition. Communication would be a good thing to help the community understand what those hurdles, and when we say RFP, the public doesn't know what that means, and they don't have any idea what the process of time frame that is. But I think for me, in this project, I am going to be looking to staff to privatize as much of this as possible, to streamline it and bring the delivery to fruition as fast as possible. That doesn't mean it's all private, but we've heard P3s, we've heard CM at risk, we've heard all these things, but there's many different aspects of this that have to be drilled down on. And I don't know why we could not get it phased in a process where we would have some things happening and maybe a 3-year, 5-year, maybe even a 10-year ultimate completion, whatever that number is, and at least let the community know what that means. Because we've certainly had, as Commissioner Lockhart knows, my family's business has been there 40-some years now. This has been talked about for a couple decades of something happening there. And here we sit. So I feel the pain of the community. I understand what y'all are talking about. And if we can bring that with as much urgency as government can, I think it would be beneficial with that good communication to the community.
Thank you. Mr. Applegate?
Could not agree more, and what I'm hearing is a very important part of the early process of this is managing expectations.
Yes.
So that will be a big part of the early plan, so that the community, as well as you, obviously, but more importantly, the community understands, one, what needs to happen, when it's going to happen, and why it's going to happen in that time frame. So that's a very important piece, and I'm glad we're having that discussion.
Thank you. Right now, there's 4 different concepts. I believe staff is asking us which concept we're going to ask for. Is there a direction of which concept they should be focusing on?
Hybrid.
Commissioner Lockhart?
Presentation from the consultant was to move forward with the hybrid model.
Correct.
Right,
the hybrid
that was their recommend, we have not
Right.
accepted that, that's what I'm asking.
Correct. So, yes, I would make a motion,
Second.
Second.
Which hybrid, A or B?
which, I'm sorry, what?
There's two hybrid models, there's A and there's B. A is keeping 5 buildings, B is keeping 3 buildings.
3 buildings.
Yeah, I think keeping the 3 buildings is probably the most appropriate. I've talked with David about that at different opportunities and given input from the community. It just makes the most sense.
Okay, that's fine. I just
financially.
want to be clear.
Mr. Chairman, so the motion, I think, would be that we would go with hybrid number 2 with one, saving building 1, 2, and 5. That's what the motion is.
Thank you.
Any discussion to that motion? Commissioner Zimbo?
I'm prepared to support that 100%, but I don't want to tie the hands of our staff or our consultants from the standpoint of, if that is the direction and they get somewhere down the road and there's a problem, that we have some ability to come back and say, hey, the best laid plans of what we wanted to do, now building 5 is, or building, what has some kind of issue.
Don't even, the numbers are.
No, I understand.
Here,
So for
We can
clarification,
I think
revisit
we all
that.
understand that, though.
Good,
so
okay.
for clarification purposes,
make
the
sure.
motion is to accept and move forward with concept 3, which is the hybrid B, which is keeping 3 buildings. But if there's anything that happens during this process that needs to come back, the staff has the ability to come back for questions. Is that correct?
absolutely, thank you.
Any other discussions to the question, the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Thank you. We're moving forward. Okay. And I appreciate all the input. I think it's all very valuable, and we've heard from Mr. Applegate, we are moving in a positive direction. Now we're going to go to County Manager's report. Mr. Applegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the weekend, I submitted a draft outline, if you will, of some things to consider as a process for selection of a new county manager. It was submitted for your review and consideration, comment. So my suggestion would be that if you have any comments now, I would certainly appreciate them. I don't want to rush into it. I think there's time for us to look at what has happened with the last process and where we go from here. So I'm open for some
Any
brief
questions?
comments.
Commissioner Zimbo.
On the communication, I think many of us may be on the same page, many of us may have different ideas. I would like for you to work with each one of our offices, my office, each one of the commissioner's office, to perfect what we may want to do moving forward. I would concur, may not be a big hurry and rush to push forward, we should be moving forward and perfecting what we ultimately want to do.
Okay. Commissioner Herr?
I might want to attempt to clarify that a little bit. So I think there's 2 different things that need perfecting. I'm going to borrow your word. One is what we're doing to manage the county between now and the time that the county manager is placed. And the second is what we're doing with regard to going to market for fulfilling this position. I'll start with the second first. With regard to going to market, it is absolutely critical that steps be added to that outline to make sure that we are buffing up the list. And I think that work has already started with purchasing. I will be submitting some work that I've done on our behalf to make sure that we're looking at firms that are national in scope in terms of their ability to do the search, that are larger than what we've experienced. I see head nods in the back, so I realize that there's concurrence on that. you can make just a few phone calls and ask them who their competitors are and expand your list exponentially, which happens to me all the time in my business. And, you know, I'd like to see it go out. So when I talked about at the last meeting building a funnel, this thing needs to go out to 50 potential firms if you want to get 20 to respond, if you want to have 5 of them that are qualified, if you want to be able to pick the top 1 or 2 to actually get the best deal we can possibly get and create competition within the process. So I think that needs to be worked on beyond the county manager's office with the senior management team and purchasing to really develop that process. It all starts with the very beginning. With regard to ongoing management, I think that needs to be pushed through in a more meaningful way with the team so that we understand who is doing what, and we get reconfigured so that we cannot keep doing what we've done for the past 20 years, where we're going to 3 people at one time. We don't have the team members to do that. And the team members that we have stepped up in such a meaningful way, including you, Bryant, and Tricia, and Melanie, and the rest of the team that's surrounding around the 3 of you. But we cannot continue to behave the way we always behave as though we're full-staffed. We're just simply not. We don't want to slow the deliverables down to the citizens by any means, which means we have to be more efficient in how we behave as well. And we need that input back from this team. So I think there's a significant amount of work that still needs to be done with regard to what was turned in.
Anyone else? Commissioner Lockhart.
I don't have any problem with having one-on-one meetings about this. My concern is that in the past, there have been one-on-one meetings, and then we come to the board to discuss, and then we wind up finding out that maybe we should have just started with a public discussion to begin with. There's nothing on this outline that I have a problem talking about or discussing. I'm happy to give my feedback on it so that everyone hears and knows what my feedback is, rather than, you know, wondering and then being, and I'm not suggesting that anybody involved in this process would manipulate the outcome, but I just feel like having public conversations is healthy. I don't know if anyone else is prepared to have that discussion today. I was, since we were provided it, and we left Friday saying that we were coming back Tuesday to have this discussion, to give direction so that we could get moving, because there was a matter of some urgency. I thought that was how we left it on Friday.
That's why I prepared this.
I thought so. So, so I'm happy to explore and expand and perfect the timeline that we asked staff to come up with, but I don't feel the need for each of the 5 of us talking about taking time from our senior staff. If that's, you know, that's going to be a lot of working and reworking individually. If we could just knock it out here, but I'll do whatever the board wants to do.
I mean, I'm happy to have, if we want to have.
Want to have the conversation now, or you want?
Conversation about Mr. Applegate's contract and anything else, I'm happy to do that.
Just to let you know, I've also handed this out because there was a discussion that I had with Mr. Chipak as well as Mr. Applegate, because they're interims, and I think you're now the county attorney, you should address this, that we just need to acknowledge what you just wrote to me.
Yes. For the record, Paul Chipak, Acting County Attorney. What I handed out was the first item on the draft review for discussion at the board meeting on the county manager search is that, excuse me, Brian Applegate will continue with the contract as an interim county manager. What does that contract entail? We don't want to get bogged down in creating a new contract. Mr. Applegate, as his position as county attorney, has a contract which includes the severability clauses, et cetera, et cetera. And again, for the public's edification, all staff works at the pleasure of the county manager, with two exceptions. The county attorney's staff works at the pleasure of the county attorney, and the county manager and the county attorney work at the pleasure of the Board of County Commissioners. So the county manager and the county attorney have specific contracts that lay out their terms, and on any given Tuesday, 3 votes can get a new county manager and a new county attorney. So with that, the thought process is Mr. Applegate will continue to fulfill the duties as interim county manager, and in the event that the board decides that they want to replace him and terminate it, the contract that he has as county attorney will fulfill the role of what those severance and termination provisions are. And in my case, I am acting county attorney. Technically, I'm still working at the pleasure of the regular county attorney. So if I am to be replaced, I would go back to my position as deputy county attorney and still working as at the pleasure of the county attorney at that point in time, whoever that may be in the future.
Seems like it's very straightforward. We just need to acknowledge this and to just approve it, that's all.
So moved approval of that.
It was just submitted by Mr.
Yes.
Chippewa.
Yes, second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Mr. Applegate, Mr. Chippewa, are you satisfied?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just want to make sure.
And if I could just follow up on Commissioner Herr's point, and which I could not agree more. This is just an outline. The outline was hopefully to engender or get comments going about how detailed you want the process to be through procurement and staff on searching for recruiting firms, national firms, what type of firms, and so no pride in authorship. This was just to hopefully kind of find out where all you are going to be on this.
Discussion? Commissioner Zimbauer, then Commissioner Herr.
Well, I think we may want to just start with the draft that was given to us and work our way right down the line. So I'll be happy to kick that off, which is what we've just sort of dealt with just a few minutes ago, which is Brian Applegate continues with a contract as interim county manager. I think we just took care of that one, except we don't have a contract as interim county manager.
Well,
It's just been taken care of.
yeah, that's been
Understood.
taken care of.
I'm going to get acknowledgement that everybody's on the same page for the public's benefit.
Correct.
Number 2, Deputy County Manager Tricia Johnson
So,
is...
hold on. So just as a process, I don't mean to interrupt you, but do you want feedback on each one of these?
Yeah, I thought we just
Okay.
took care of number 1, but...
Well, let's talk about
wanna
that.
explore that further?
I do.
Okay, good.
So I think we took care of the contract piece of this.
Right.
In the sense that because Bryant has stepped up and into this interim role, it doesn't negate the fact that he already has a contract, which I appreciate, created exposure for you that was unintentional. So we fixed that piece of it. I do think we have to talk about the greater role around the interim county manager, and if that continues to be Mr. Applegate, then do we continue in the current form? Do we wrap additional resources around the team? All of that good stuff, which may come out in later, but I don't want to just pass by number 1 and say, we're just going to keep doing what we were doing. If I recall correctly, you agreed to do this for 2 months and see it through and get us through the process, which you have done. This going on for another extended period of time, which it's going to be an extended period of time, I think we just have to acknowledge that we need to make sure we have the best possible management team wrapped around our staff that we possibly can. And so I'll leave it there so you can keep going if you would like.
No, I appreciate that.
Excuse me? So, I think we need, Mr. Constantine would like to say something next?
Oh, I thought, yeah, okay. Thank you.
She's done speaking.
Okay.
For the moment.
I want to make sure they're, okay. Well, yes.
Trying to
but
be respectful to everyone.
If you look at number 3, though, I think that the county manager, or the acting county manager, right now is looking to put another position in there as an interview, as part of it, to help alleviate some of the workload that you're discussing. Also, I think that in many conversations, both informally and formally at this board, Mr. Applegate has said that he's willing to continue on this until we find the right person. So, I think that 2 and 3 go hand in hand. I believe that the current manager, assistant managers,
Commissioner,
and
can we have a blank copy to put up on the television screen?
and looking at a third
Janie, can you put that up there, please?
interim deputy county manager position, I think that I think that that's what he's been looking at. Yes, this is how I'm going to handle the workload that's presented to me.
Commissioner Lockhart.
So I was not here when the last county manager was an interim county manager for a period of time. Has it been the practice of this board in the past to have the interim county manager have a contract as the interim county manager?
We did one for Nicole when she first.
We did.
And is that something that this board would like to have brought back to us to?
I don't think we need to, because we now have this.
Well,
I can, if.
I mean, that just says that if we get rid of him as the interim, that he still gets to be the county attorney. It doesn't say that.
No.
No, it doesn't.
If I may?
Yes.
Okay. The intent of that was if there is reason to terminate Mr. Applegate as interim county manager, you have 2 options. One is to say you're going back to county attorney position and everything stays the same, everything else stays the same, or 2, thank you for your service to the county, you're out of here.
Okay.
And in that situation, the severance provisions of his existing county attorney contract would
Come into play.
cover how that termination is going to occur.
So you're comfortable not having a contract as interim county manager?
With that understanding, I am.
Okay.
Right.
So we want to make sure that exactly what Mr. Chipak just said is reflected in the record.
Tori made
Okay.
the motion.
Okay, I understand, but it wasn't
Commissioner
terribly clear.
Zimbow?
While we're discussing that, I just wanted a point of clarification. I think it was 3 or 4 months ago, I brought up the fact that the then county attorney, which is now the interim acting county manager, has not had a review per his contract and not had a
I did his review.
consideration of increases in, we were told that would come back later.
I'm sorry, I just did Mr. Applegate's review this last week.
I did mine last week.
And something rain? I was wondering what that noise was. And so just reminding that we have not covered that. Now we're going to have a dual role, and I want to make sure with Mr. Applegate that that review process is separate and apart from the interim county manager.
Right, and I have remaining interviews scheduled with those that have not completed the review. That was for the 6-month review from my evaluation last December as county attorney.
Right.
So I know it's a little confusing, but,
Right.
We're in a confusing
Just want to
time.
make sure we're not doing the interim county manager overlapping and joining the
No,
two together.
no.
So we're clear.
Correct.
Commissioner Lockhart, I just wanted to make sure, I thought he was addressing your question that you were
That's
asking.
okay. So since we talked about number 3, and I do think wrapping the team around is absolutely critical, and so the process of interviewing and selecting an interim deputy county manager or hiring another deputy county manager to fill the vacant role would be completely appropriate. And I don't know what the consensus is on that topic, but we definitely, from my perspective, need to fill that hole.
Okay. I would have waited until the permanent county manager got here, but
I'm there as well.
I am there as well.
So, but number 3, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up, but number 3 says interview and select an interim deputy county manager, not,
So the way I look at this, commissioners, is that between now and end of September, the biggest thing that we'll be working on is the budget. That's the number one thing. Our staff has got that well under control. We're going to be looking at the budget, we're looking at the salary adjustments, that's all part of the budget process. For the next couple of months, that's really what we're going to be discussing. I mean, there'll be some zoning issues here and there, but that's the long piece of it. And I think that our staff is very well entrenched in it. I think they have it very well handled. I think our staff is doing a phenomenal job, even though they're shorthanded. To bring someone in, I think to bring that person up to speed may even just make it a little more complicated, because all we're going to be discussing over the next couple of months is the budget process. That's the way I see it. That's the main thing.
So I've not been privy to the discussions around item number 3, so perhaps interim county manager / county attorney / Superman.
All around good guy.
Yeah, can you just enlighten us on what that bullet means?
The key there is interim. We do not want, and Tricia, Melanie, and I talked about this outline, and they were, helpful in drafting all this. We felt that having an interim deputy county manager, one, you don't want to saddle the new county manager with a permanent position. He or she might want to bring in, their own team. So the interim it could very possibly be somebody in-house to help divide up some of the duties. So that was the main focus, just for this time period, to help senior management keep the ship, steady. And that's been our goal as interim, is to make sure things are going the way they're supposed to be going, and, get through this budget process with the issues that we're facing. And I know we've been starting the meeting process with all of you on that. So when I said I would be here for 8 to 12 weeks, that was with the hope that, we had somebody either close to be on board or on board. We have a fantastic staff. I'm happy to continue on until we get somebody on board. So the interim part of number 3 is the most important part, that we don't lock somebody in, and then the new county manager has to worry about having that role.
Rich Constantine?
And, Mr. Chairman, I saw this as an internal matter that the county manager would decide. It's not, I don't want us to micromanage. I think that's why I was saying, wonderful. I assumed, that they would select the right person with the understanding that this was an interim position, whether it would be internal or external. But I saw this as, this is where Mr. Applegate and his immediate deputy county managers were saying, this is what we need to continue doing this. It's an internal matter. I'm not going to micromanage. That's why I'm more than happy to agree with number 3.
Anybody else?
So how does number 3 relate to number 4?
Number 4 is simply an option I gave all of you to consider. If you wanted to have somebody from, I just love the name, the Range Riders, to help with the selection process for the county manager position, not to come in. Their role really is to help with recruiting, qualified people.
See, I really believe that if we're going to be doing we're hiring a national firm, they should be doing that.
Right.
I'm sorry, but it's inconsistent with what's on the page. The last piece of it is, and providing assistance to the jurisdiction during the interview phase of the placement process, which to me sounds, as was described by Commissioner Constantine, because I think this all comes from the Association of Counties and all of those organizations, that they actually can potentially provide a list of candidates that can come in. Is that a misunderstanding on my part?
I think it is. It's in there. The main goal of listing this here is to have them assist in the selection process. I think anybody who we hire, just like Bob Slavin did, contact them to see if they had any recommendations. I don't think there's a need to bring in somebody from the outside from this group.
So I just want clarification. they have the capability to give us talent to add to staff as opposed to pulling from existing staff to move somebody into an interim role.
Right. I have not discussed it with them. That's what their webpage says. But I can tell you that when I talk to our senior staff about it, I think it's just going to add more, I don't want to say more confusion, but I think, I'll just say, I think we're doing a pretty good job keeping the ship going. And at this point, I don't see a need to bring somebody in who does not know this county, does not know the staff, does not know our processes in the middle of a budget process, to bring somebody in to say, here's how things are going to be. I just don't see that as it being the right step at the right time.
Commissioner Lockhart.
So I think it might be helpful for you to have a conversation with the Florida County Manager Association, find out exactly what the menu of services are that the range riders offer, and see how they may or may not be helpful, and let us know what, because it's not an all or nothing thing. And it may be that there's an interim deputy that would be someone that you could choose that wouldn't be an interim county manager, but an interim deputy county manager, perhaps. I'm not sure how many people are going to be interested in taking on an interim deputy county manager role from the general population unless they are a part of a program that they know it's an interim situation. So I would like to glean whatever wisdom we can from that organization, from their experience. Certainly, we went out on our own and tried to hire a consulting firm and to a recruiting firm, and we didn't end well. So I would be happy to get the advice from any organization who does this on a regular basis. It doesn't mean that we have to necessarily take their people, but it just running by them. Here's what we're thinking of doing. Here's our process. Can you give it the once over? I think, there's a wise man seeks counsel. So that would be my thought on connecting with the range riders.
Commissioner Zimboud and Commissioner Constantine.
All that could be explored. And I think we just heard our interim county manager say that, and I don't disagree, that our staff has risen to the occasion. Things are going as good as one could expect. The boat's floating. We don't have any big issues really coming up, through the end of the year other than the budget. I think Commissioner Laurie brought that up. But here's my take on this. Staff works best with consistency. If we keep changing and plugging things in and moving our interims in and out and all this kind of stuff, it gets confusing, it gets unsettling to staff, number one, and number two. The reality is we hired a job-seeking organization. We did not hire a headhunter. I would prefer that we hire a headhunter to go after the top talent in the country. This board's going to decide who that is from the RFP process or how much money we're going to spend to do that, to recruit top talent. We also have to understand top talent's going to, more likely than not, going to want to bring in their own team. So putting interims in along the way could be hazardous not only to the health of the organization, but the health of any new county manager coming in. So I would like us to see a timeline, that's somewhat parallel to what's given to us. But I think we all have to understand, with elections right around the corner in this country, politics are going to change at certain counties and so forth, where there is going to be top talent actually looking for work that otherwise may not be. So taking all that in consideration puts us into the November timeline. I'd like to know what my fellow commissioners feel. I get we want to try to do something as soon as we possibly can to ease our staff's burden. But I think we've heard that they're doing pretty darn good as it is. And if that needs clarified, then we certainly should explore that, because I don't want to burden them any further if we're really, the big lift is going to be our budget sessions. I'd like to know what their thought process is there.
Commissioner Constantine.
Thank you. I understand where Commissioner Lockhart said that, it didn't end well. I actually thought it ended very well, and I'll say why, because I think that we really came as a group to clarity more as to what we were looking for, because we realized that what we had in front of us was not what we were looking for, and we were looking for something better. So here's where we are right now. We're talking about in my opinion, we're talking about two different things. We should be very much involved in the process of selecting a county manager, a full-time, permanent county manager, and we should be discussing that process as we're going through it. As far as the internal workings of the county, of the interim county manager and the deputies, that's their job, and we're not CEOs. We're the board of directors. They should be handling what they need to do that job on an ongoing basis until we fill the position. So the association, or the counties and the Rage Riders, whatever, whatever Mr. Applegate thinks that he needs for them to help, that's his job. And I don't want to get involved in doing his job, his day-to-day job. I want to sit here and focus on, okay, are we going to go national headhunter? How are we going to do this and everything? Because I really believe that we gave them the assignment, keep the ship estate afloat. I believe they're doing an excellent job of doing that. I've, since the time that Mr. Applegate and the others have formulated this particular plan of action from when they first took over, I feel a lot more sense of calmness and unity within the staff moving forward. And so I'm very comfortable if they're asking, this is what we need, that they have their job down pat. Now, our job is to focus on how, what the search, who we want to provide help in that search, and how we move forward with that. So I think we're spending a little bit too much time in talking about, telling Mr. Applegate, what he needs to do to fulfill his job. I think he knows what he needs to do. He's basically telling us what he's going to do moving forward.
Commissioner Constantine, I would agree wholeheartedly. I think staff is doing a phenomenal job in many different levels, not just the county manager's office, but all the directors. I think you're all doing a phenomenal job. Did you hear that, Mr. Applegate? Yes. I also believe that the attorneys under Paul Chipok is doing a phenomenal job. I'll tell you a little side story. I was having a conversation with Mr. Applegate and Mr. Chipok, and they were talking about something, and all of a sudden a discussion came about between the two, and then all of a sudden they had to realize, well, wait a minute, Mr. Applegate is not the county attorney, he's the county manager, so he had to acquiesce to the county attorney. Is that correct?
It was about letting an employee go home early.
It was quite comical.
I heard from Paul's office saying, "You're letting my people go home early?"
But I mean,
so look,
that's how they take their job so seriously. But also, Mr. Applegate, I believe you're all doing a phenomenal job. I really do.
And I
also believe that Commissioner Constantine's correct. We just need to give you the tools. We're giving you the tools. Run with it. You and your staff are doing a phenomenal job. You really are.
And the interim county manager position, I'm happy to contact the range riders and get their help, and they may have somebody that would be an excellent interim county manager.
Deputy?
Or the deputy county manager. That's why.
Or not.
That's why I listed it, that I'm going to, these are options that we're looking at. I don't want to say it's been absolute fun, but I'm working with amazing people that have stepped up.
Hear that, Trish? Hear that, Melanie? Hear that, staff?
Yeah.
And so I'm willing to continue on and do what we need to do to keep the county going, and I will abide by whatever you decide on how we go about retaining the process for getting a new county manager.
Commissioner Lockhart?
So I just want to go back to the fact that this is titled Draft for Review and Discussion at BCC Meeting. So we gave direction on Friday to our team to come back with a very specific outline and timeline for what the process was going to be. And they did it. And so awesome. And so now they're asking for us to give feedback, which I think we're giving, not micromanaging, but they're asking for direction and consultation on their steps moving forward. I don't feel like that's micromanaging, but I agree with you that if, and clearly, because it is number 3 on the list, our current acting county manager and team feel like they need an interim deputy county manager. So support, I think that's all that's being said. The items that are, let me just address one more thing about this situation with bringing in a new county manager, and that as someone of a certain caliber is going to want to bring in their own team. I am not in any way, shape, or form interested in hiring a new CEO for this organization whose plan is to come in with their own team. That's not my plan at all. So I want, everybody's giving staff kudos. I'm going to not only give you kudos, I'm going to say I'm not looking for somebody that's going to replace you when they come in. I think that's a perfectly acceptable question to ask a CEO when they're coming in. You know, what is your plan for structuring of staff? And I will tell you that if we think they're so great, the next CEO is going to think they're fabulous too, and there shouldn't be any reason to come in and bring in their own team. For the timeline to be completed by July 15th, is this something that it's a reasonable timeline? Is that still your expectation?
Yes, and Diana's here if you want any specifics on.
I would, if she's, Diane, are you willing to come forward and ask about some of this? Because I think this is one of the things that I know I had a lot of questions about, how did we get to only having 2 respondents the last time? And so if we could kind of understand what happened and what we're going to do differently this time, that I think would be phenomenal.
Hi, Diane Reed, Purchasing and Contracts Division Manager. When we put out the solicitation previously for the executive search firm, we blasted that out to 329 vendors from our database. But sometimes vendors register for commodity codes that are not accurate. We had 8 on the plan holders list. Of those 8, 5 were actual recruitment type firms. The 3 were more like what we have, the vendor database, like we use VendorLink right now. So just receiving the 2 proposals. Metroplan Orlando did a similar search. They only received 2. Volusia County did a similar search. They only received 2 proposals. I've since Friday reached out to several other entities in Florida, and I've received about 11 different scopes to try to look at what they've used in the past. And I've compiled a list of about 27 nationwide search firms, executive search firms, that have responded to other agencies' RFPs, and then just doing some research on my own. So I feel confident that we have a good pool that we can reach out to. I've also reached out to and haven't heard back from AESC, which is an Association of Executive Search and Leadership Development Consultants, to find out how that organization works to help with what we're looking to do. Of those 27 firms that I had compiled that list, only 4 of them were already in our vendor database. So.
Good job, thank you. Commissioner Herr, then Commissioner Zimbo.
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're currently using VendorLink and we're looking to move to Deltek, DemandStar, whatever they call themselves now.
No, we're currently looking at going to OpenGov.
It's all the same company. So lots of acquisitions over the years. One of the issues is that VendorLink is a homegrown Florida, run out of a very small operation that doesn't, and quite honestly, I use all of these systems for my Highland role, and quite honestly, VendorLink is simply the worst one that's out there from a vendor's perspective. You put in your own commodity codes, there's no support behind it to make sure that you're getting access to the right RFPs out there. So I would encourage us to engage with the new vendor. They typically come with account management teams that can lead, they can actually go into their system, do searches, and find lists of vendors that have been responsive to these types of things. So that's one additional thing to do. And quite frankly, this is important enough from my perspective that we should be making phone calls to them before the RFP hits the street to say, we want you to be on the lookout for this. That's a game changer when you're evaluating whether or not you're going to spend the money of your firm to respond to an RFP, because it is expensive to do so. And the fact that we're saying this is real and we're looking for a real response will change our outcomes.
Commissioner Zimbauer?
Thank you. Just to address a point Commissioner Lockhart brought up in clarification, absolutely our staff has done a great job. And when I say a new CEO would bring on its own team, I'm referring to your interim county manager, not mixing that up and plugging people in and then pulling them out and putting somebody else in. That's the consistency. In no way, shape, or form do I believe our staff's not capable of doing their job. So in regards to the RFP, your response to RFPs is directly proportional to how the RFP is written. And so there should be some folks really looking at the way this RFP is written. And I'm just gonna say it. I've had contractors and people contact me as a commissioner in this county and said they're not going to respond to an RFP because they believe it's a closed shop. They believe the deal's already done, the books are burned, so on and so forth. So we have to overcome that issue along with making sure the RFP is written properly. The RFP can be written in such a fashion to get those top groups if we're portraying in the RFP what we're truly looking for. Putting an RFP out for an organization that can run a job posting, we can do that ourselves. We don't need that kind of person or entity. We need a top CEO recruitment organization that can go out and actually understand what's going on around the country and target certain individuals for that. So I think, I don't know what the answer is how we work on that RFP and how it's drafted and how it's worded, but I think the language is going to be very important to get the responses I think we all would want, as many people weighing in as possible, so we have multiple entities to pick from. When we only have 2 or 3, no disrespect to what the process we just went through, sometimes you just got to pick the least of the worst, which is not really what we want to do. So, for what it's worth.
Thank you. Thank you,
Oh,
Diana.
gosh. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Constantine.
if we didn't send the message that this is not a closed shop after what we just did, I don't know whatever will change it. I think that there's a lot of things that we have done over the last 3 or 4 months that recognize this is no longer an inside job, and we're looking for the best nationwide that we can find.
Mr. Applegate, do you believe you have direction?
Chairman?
One more.
Commissioner Hur?
So I appreciate that update from purchasing. I want to go back to the notion of interim management and just offer an outside perspective.
How much longer are you going to be able to do that?
Listen, when I really do feel like the newcomer, and I think I'm going to feel like that for a long time based on just how we hear each other. And I see this in private sector as well, when the people that have been here for 16 years and the new guy comes in, they just blow him off. And it's not healthy. It's human nature, but it's not healthy. And so I have felt that resistance with regard to my input for this, and I can tell you that I back down on a good number of things where I think we have people up here that understand it better than I do. But Sourcing senior leadership is something that I've done over and over again in my career, and I can tell you that my experience level at this is pretty significant, and I think listening might be a good idea. So opportunities for improvement are not rare, but one at this level is significant. And the reason that I continue to push back is because there seems to be general resistance to bringing in an outsider, even on a temporary basis. And that has raised the hair on the back of my neck. So now I'm sitting here thinking, I want it even more. I'm just being honest with you. And so we do have areas of this organization that have tremendous opportunity for improvement, as any organization would have. And that's not an indictment on staff. Let me be clear about that. That's an indictment on how things have always been, how we've expected things to be, how we behave with our teams, et cetera. And bringing somebody in from outside on an interim basis with absolutely nothing to lose would benefit this team more than anything else, because guess who they'd be able to tell, straighten up to? The 5 of us. And the opportunity for us to improve is huge. And the reality of it is there's nobody up here in the 5 of us that wants a bad outcome. We just have habits. I bring mine from the private sector, and some of them are not good. And I don't know which ones are and which ones aren't. And that goes to all 5 of us. And so I would just bring back to the 3 senior leaders that I really would like a healthy discussion about the potential for somebody coming in with objective eyes, with nothing to lose, which none of us here can say that we have, to bring new perspective to the organization on behalf of, A, the citizens, and the staff, and us as well. So I'll leave it at that. And that, you know what, I'm not going to leave it at that. I'm glad you clarified that, because your statement earlier did freak me out about replacing staff.
Yeah.
And a true CEO, if we hired the right person, wouldn't do that anyway.
Right, exactly.
A true leader wouldn't do that, so
Agreed.
I'm glad we got that clarified.
I just want,
Commissioner, are we done for the moment?
Yes, thank you.
just want clarification from the interim county manager. Tell us what the conversation was with staff that you alluded to earlier about bringing somebody in, and
I don't
I want to
think-
make sure I didn't misunderstand that.
I don't
mean, I
think
don't
there-
disagree. We could bring in, and we could go out and hire an interim county manager for that matter, or source one, or somebody from the outside. But Mr. Applegate, please go ahead.
I knew I should have brought the Tylenol bottle. Look, I have no problem in asking the range riders or anybody else who's interested that has experience if they want to come in and be the interim deputy county manager to help in this process. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when I was asked by a lot of department heads, senior staff, well, what happens if they don't hire somebody? And what are you going to do? What are the options? And, you know, obviously the first option is at some point you're going to go out to look for a new county manager in the second process. There was just this general view that for someone to come in at this point for 12 weeks or 16 weeks, whatever it's going to take, to bring in a new county manager, to bring in an acting county manager for that short period of time just didn't make a lot of sense to myself and to a lot of other people in this room. But that's not ruling out, that's why number 3 is number 3, to see about, I mean, it wasn't a coincidence that 3 and 4 are next to one another. I'm not ruling out bringing somebody in as an interim deputy. I understand where Commissioner Hurd is coming from on that point, I do. But you know, your vote of confidence in what the 3 of us are doing and the department heads is greatly appreciated. That doesn't mean that we can't make another step in that process. That's all I'm saying.
So I would expand that thought process to not only considering outside, I'll call it consultation, with respect to coming in as an interim deputy, but with respect to, there may be other ways to do it as well. Just broaden the thought process.
Okay.
Because we're in a weird time, and being narrow in the thought process is going to create limited results where there may be tremendous opportunities to find somebody that can actually look at this through a different lens.
Mr. Applegate, do you believe you have direction and understanding?
I think what we're going to do is come back with a recommendation on the top flight firm and process for retention of an RFP and the firm under that RFP. Whether that's a headhunter, as Commissioner Zembauer has stated, or a regular search and seek firm, that remains to be seen. One of the instructions on this outline is that we are going to contact the vendors and tell them that there's an RFP coming out. So Diane's been ahead of the curve already on all that, and we'll continue doing that. So long-winded answer, I think step number one is to develop and look at every list possible to come back with a large number of vendors being contacted to apply to be the search firm or headhunter, regardless of which one, so that you can make that decision. Is that?
Commissioner Constantine, he hasn't spoken in a while. Then I'll go
I'm
back
seeing,
down the list.
yes.
Other people want to speak. Then we need to
But yes.
make some decisions.
I think we all need to do, but internally, there's two different things here. Internally, you know, it's your job, what you decide. There's been some recommendations and suggestions, but you know what, you can get an insider, outsider, whatever you want for this far to the interim, because that's your job, not our job. On the other position, yes, I think I'm very much interested in expanding everything we can and to get the best qualified candidates we possibly can. Now, Mr. Chairman, I just need to say one other thing. And Commissioner Herb, I served with you with many, many boards. And I had so much fun with you on leadership when you and I would sit there and talk about things when everybody else was saying.
I had to move my chair.
No, she did not. She enjoyed it, and she I never considered you an outsider. If anybody on this board would have been an outsider, and I think Commissioner Delory will say this, when I first got elected in 2012, I was the outsider. I have told people time and time again that this is the most talented group of 5 county commissioners or any group that I've ever served with as together. We all have our talents, we all have our positives, we all have our negatives. But you've been a consultant to this county commission for a long, long time, to the county for a long, long time. So I've never thought of you as an outsider, and I just need you to know that everything you say, I take with a great deal of respect, and many times I agree with you. Sometimes I don't agree with you, but that doesn't mean that I don't really appreciate your input. So I don't want anybody here. It's the same thing with Commissioner Lockhart and her experiences, and certainly with Commissioner Zembauer from the zoning board and his private sector. I consider all of you highly talented, and I respect each and every one of your opinions. So I don't want people to think that I consider myself an outsider. Listen, I was the outsider. I was the guy that nobody listened to, and I was shouting in the wind. Well, I feel great about this group, and I respect each and every one of you. I hope you feel the same way about what I'm saying, whether you agree or disagree. And the one thing I want to make sure that we're always doing is we can always disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that this group is doing better at that than any group that I have been on this board with on any given year. So I just want that to be known, that I value your
Commissioner Constantine,
information.
I think we all value each other's
No,
information.
I know, but I mean, but I heard that she felt that we weren't, and I certainly respect, your counsel a great deal.
Thank you.
Anyone else before we move on? Commissioner Lockhart.
So I just want to touch on number 7, if I could. A top flight firm is going to produce an advertisement and profile of the county, including a website and all sorts of wonderful glossy things. So given, if that doesn't happen before we hire the firm, from my perspective, that's okay, because there's a lot of other things going on in the county right now, and the right firm is going to do that for us, and we'll have to take up staff time to do it. That's just my 2 cents.
No, and that's what we're hoping that happens, so.
Number 7.
Commissioner Zimbauer.
Thank you. I won't go into all the conversation that Commissioner Constantine has, but I genuinely do appreciate the dialogue we all have up here and everybody's perspective. I think it's helpful that we all arrive at, whether we agree on the final decision or not, we can all agree that we're taking each other's input and having that debate so we can try to make the best decision on behalf of the citizens. On the RFP issue is, what I would like to consider is, just for our own benefit moving forward, in contacting those different firms out there that you're going to reach out to and call, I would like to consider, if they tell us they're not going to reply or they don't reply, it may be wise business to follow up and say, why? Why did you not respond to RFP? Why are you telling us when we're reaching out to you, we're not even going to bother, if that's the case? I think that would be something for us to maybe understand moving forward, whether it's on this issue or something else. And they may be able to point out, this is why we're not going to reply. I think would be a good thing to consider, for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anyone else? The only thing I want to do is echo Commissioner Constantine's sentiment that I do value everyone's input, no matter how new they are or how seasoned they are. Every one of us has a lot of institutional knowledge in many different areas of where we come from, and I value that all. Mr. Applegate, do you believe you have direction?
I do, and I want to thank Diane because she's already ahead of the curve from the work that she's done. We'll continue reaching out, and any suggestions that you have to help Diane and this office would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Applegate.
Yes.
And now move on to the county attorney's report.
Just one thing to bring you up to speed on, the negotiations between county staff and Local 3254 of the International Association of Firefighters B Unit is drawing to a close, and we are going to be scheduling a shade meeting in accordance with Florida Statute Section 447.605 for you on June 28th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. to bring you up to speed and to get further direction.
Thank you. Anything else?
Not at this time.
Okay. Any questions? Let's move on to committee reports. Commissioners, District 4.
In the interest of time, because we have already touched on some of these things in our conversation, I will just say that we had a wonderful Memorial Day celebration at the city of Sanford, and I was happy to be able to represent all of us in reading the proclamation, and everything else can wait.
Thank you. District 3.
Thank you very much. And yes, we had another one on the 27th in which both Commissioner Herr and Commissioner Lockhart also attended, and I know that others were out of town, but that was a wonderful event up at the courthouse. The Seminole County Chamber had a legislative update, which I participated in, which I think that a lot of folks liked because it was some of those old timers telling us some stories. I think Commissioner Zimbauer was there. Also, I wanted everybody to know at the Expressway Authority meeting that the airport expressway, or whatever we want to call it, is in the 5-year program. I do want everyone to know that we are going to have to to move that forward, put skin in the game, as well as the city of Sanford. And I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. I think we all understood that, but there, when we're talking about locking up that right-of-way, it's extremely important that we're at the front of it and we're participating in the acquisition of that right-of-way. I got back last night, or this morning at 1:30 from Columbus, Ohio for the National Association of Regional Councils. Many of you remember that Commissioner Delory was president of that just recently. I'm on the board of directors and was speaking at one of their events, representing not only the MPO and Regional Planning Council, but also ourselves. Tomorrow, the Legacy Point at UCF is going to open, which is the first major UCF project in Seminole County, and I think it's going to be one of their absolute best, with a total education retirement circumstance. And so they're going to have a grand opening, as well as on Thursday, and all access to that. And just wanted to remind each and every one of you about the upcoming Florida Association of Counties meeting at the Hyatt Regency from June 28th to July 1st, and that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. District 5, District 5.
Yes, Commissioners, I'd like to appoint Doug McClendon to the Sanford Community Redevelopment Agency Board. He will be filling the position 5 on the board, left by Bryant Volk, who stepped down.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Secondly, I wanted to make you aware of the fact that CareerSource has created a public service academy for Orange County. They are focused on hiring, so here's a heads up, fire personnel through the Career Academy, or the Public Service Academy created by CareerSource. They used ARPA funds to fund it. Austin, Texas is doing the same thing through their local agency for environmental services, and I just want to bring to your attention that this may be an opportunity, given some of the depth of openings that we have and the duration of openings that we have. And then if you all were serious about doing a fundraiser at Elevate, I'm all in, and maybe we should think about doing it for the only homeless shelter in Seminole County. We'd be happy to take your time and talent to race around the racetrack to see if I can beat you.
Commissioner, I'm sure there's a lot of charities that would want us to identify and help them raise money.
We could go every weekend and do one for every charity.
Sounds like fun.
We could.
And then we could have the world championship at the end, like Daytona 500.
Commissioner, anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. District 2?
I'll shorten mine up. Of course, saw Commissioner Delory as our districts overlap in the Winter Springs with the roundabout design meeting with our staff, engineering, and our consultant. Thank you all very much for putting that on and meeting with all the residents over there and answering all those questions. Big shout out to our SERVE volunteers who right on Lake Jessup in my district, doing some planting around the Lake Jessup watershed, so we appreciate that very much. Also want to thank our staff for working with the Sunrise community on the HOA concerns about the outfall in the retention ponds and determining that there may be some things that we could assist with, but also identify some problems that they had. They're very appreciative of that, and so am I. Sunland Estates, Lake Dot, has quieted down, as many are known. It looks like the case of bird flu that impacted that body of water over there looks like it's not impacting as it once was, or we've not seen it further along, so thank goodness for that. And also a quick reminder, Geneva parade, the July 4th parade, which is one of the best parades in the county. Just reminding everybody that kicks off at 8:30 in the morning for festivities. The parade will start at 10 a.m. Hope to see everybody there. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Under my report, I have one item, and I've emailed this to all of you. That's the letter we spoke about regarding Red Cleveland and a hotel. I want to make sure that have your approval before I sign this. We've changed it around to be a little more inclusive and generic at the same time. This was emailed to each one of your offices. Is there direction on the
Motion to approve the letter as presented.
motion? Is second. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Future agenda items, we have none. We'll now go to public comments that are not related to the agenda. Ms. Shaney Beach.
The first speaker is David Baer.
Can have that.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
David Baer, 921 Tuscaloosa Trail. I'm here in my capacity as president of Save Rural Seminole, as well as president of the Lake Tuscaloosa Homeowner Association. Ms. Harmon is providing you guys very small packets. The documents she's giving you are the same documents that I emailed you all yesterday. So if you already have them, already looked at them, there's not new information for you to try to digest there. I am here as on a timely issue. We all spend a lot of time in our beautiful community here in Seminole County. And one of the things that makes the county so wonderful for a lot of us, both out here and I know a lot of you, are the fruits of the 1990 Land Acquisition Initiative. Through that program, Rick Durr and Jim Doobie and the county staff had made available and acquired and preserved public land, which we all use a lot. We especially used it a lot during COVID, but we're using it now and we used it before. Without that program, those resources would not have been here for the public's use. The county would be a very, very different place than it is. I went to the Envision 2045 program, and I know a lot of you did, and I know a lot of you have seen the data from it, and you're being presented it this afternoon. And I was not at all surprised that a number of the residents, the majority of the residents actually, overwhelmingly said that they love the county's natural lands program, and that one of the things they wanted the county to do was to continue and expand the natural lands program, because there's more people here, and there's more people using those lands than there were in 1990 and 2000. And in the packet, I included some of the documentation of that. If you turn to page 3, one of the things they did at these Envision 45 programs is they had vision boards. And people wrote sticky notes, and they put the sticky notes up on those vision boards. And you can see a picture that I took of one of those vision boards. It's hard to read it, so I'll just use my Zoom here and copy down a couple of them. So some of the sticky notes that are there say, purchase natural lands. That's what one of the attendees said on the opportunity board. Another said, save public open space. Another sticky note said, be a leader in the state for rural preservation. Another sticky note said, more public lands. And another one said, more preserved lands. These are just, a couple of the samples from this one picture I took at one of the many meetings. If you turn to the sheet before, there was I think you could turn in survey sheets or you could do it on your phone. And there was a survey that they did as a part of the 2045 meetings about priorities. And in this survey, 96% of the attendees said that one of their priorities, these are the community members through the mechanism that you guys put into place to get feedback from the community, 96% of them said that their priority was preserving more environmental lands. Of those 96%, 80% rated that as one of their most important values. These are the values of the community, and they're telling you what they want. In order to implement that value of the community, the way to do that is to resume the referendum that was put into place in the 90s. So resuming the program of the natural lands acquisition through a referendum. As you all know, there's 3 ways to do that. One of the ways to do that is by the commissioners using their authority to put that on the ballot. That's quintessentially, I think, what your guys' job is to implement, facilitate the values of the community being a part of the public policy for the community. And so you have the opportunity to use your authority as commissioners to put this land acquisition referendum on the ballot. What I'm asking you to do here, in the packet, there is a proposed land referendum. And what I'm asking you guys to do is to use this opportunity for you, the commissioners, to facilitate that process by giving the citizens the ability to use the democratic process. Use the democratic process as an opportunity to express their values and their vision for the future of our county. The way you as commissioners can do that is by today asking staff to put this proposed land acquisition referendum on the agenda item for the July 26th commissioner meeting. Between now and then, you would ask staff to do research, gather information so that at that July 26th meeting, you guys are in a position to vote as to whether you want to use your authority to put this on the 2022 ballot so the citizens can vote as to whether this, as it seems apparent to me, would in fact do something that they want our county to look like. So you have the proposed ballot referendum there. And you have all that information. I'm happy to answer any questions, provide any more information you have pursuant to follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. Commissioner Zimbauer?
I don't believe Mr. Bear was here at the time, but we had this same issue come up back in 2018 or 2019. Commissioner Lockhart and I had just come on the board, and our Parks Foundation folks helped facilitate some studying about this. I also attended the Envision 2045 in my district when it was put on, and thanks staff for doing that. A lot of good input, a lot of good citizen interaction. I think this is a great idea. I would support this 100%. We continue to hear about people that want additional parks, but to me, what I've always been trying to, even before I was a commission, we have a lot of disconnected trail connections where we can connect to not only state parks, but other county parks in our surrounding area, which would take funding to do that, in addition to setting aside additional lands. And the Parks Foundation at that time had identified 2 or 3 parcels. So I think that there's nothing more democratic of a process than doing something like this, and I would support that 100%.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
We're going to need a motion to put it on the agenda. Or any more conversation?
Well, I think we're having a conversation at this point.
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Well, so you sent the email last night, yesterday afternoon. Nancy was gracious enough to hand us out hard copies. I did have a couple things going on yesterday afternoon preparing for this meeting that didn't involve your email. I would like to have some more time to digest this. You and I had a conversation months ago, Mr. Bear, where you came to my office and you pitched a similar but different concept. And I shared with you at that time that I felt very uncomfortable increasing property taxes or putting something on the ballot to increase property taxes at this point in time in the state of our economy, inflation. We're on the precipice potentially of a recession. Some might argue we're already in a recession. Philosophically, I am opposed to increasing property taxes just because it's a great idea, right? And I'm not saying natural lands aren't a great idea. They're wonderful. And I am so grateful that people decades ago had the vision to do what they did. Is there another way to accomplish this? I shared with you my thought process, and I'll throw it out here. I think there's always more than one way to skin a cat, and I'm going to make the animal rights people unhappy. There's always more than one way to think about something, and I shared with you that the penny sales tax is coming up for renewal, and that there might be an opportunity to re-envision how that is funded, and I shared a little bit about that with the county attorney. We've talked about that a little bit. So I think there's a lot to be discussed here, more than just, and I respect you immensely, but if we get to the place in these meetings where a citizen comes for 3 minutes and says, I want this on your next agenda, I want this on the ballot, and we just all say, okay, yeah, great, without doing our due diligence, I'm not sure that's really the best move.
I'm sorry. When you're done, before somebody else chimes in, if it's appropriate for me to respond to some of the points or questions she's asked, I'd love to.
I really didn't ask a question, I don't think, but.
Issues you've raised, Jack.
She's just making comments at this moment.
So my other thought about this is that I know the county attorney, acting county manager, I'm going to keep doing that, I'm sorry. I know the acting county manager has been working with Mr. Baer, and perhaps the acting county attorney has also been working with Mr. Baer, because you told me you'd spent quite a bit of time on the phone with them and talking about this and coming up with the language. And so I'm just wondering which of us as board members gave the direction to our county staff to do that without the direction of the board.
Well, let me clarify that statement. Is that me, or is it?
I don't know.
Sorry. I'll clarify that. One, I think I spent maybe 5 minutes with Mr. Baer, giving him some quick suggestions about, just as a courtesy to a citizen, about there was some obvious, and I tell you the truth, I still think this is confusing, the title's confusing. Anyway, that was it. And I instructed Mr. Chiplock not to work on this until 3 members of the board instructed us to do that. So I want to clarify that. Now, I don't.
Because when I asked Mr. Baer if the chairman was aware that he was going to be bringing this up, he said, "Oh, yes, absolutely."
And I told Mr.
So,
I'm sorry for interrupting.
That's okay.
I told Mr. Baer, because I want to make that point, did I not tell you that I can't do anything on this, or staff can't do anything on it, until there's 3 members of this board?
Yep.
So
if one of us...
Just for clarification, Mr. Baer did have a meeting in my office. Mr. Applegate was there, and we had that almost exact verbatim conversation, correct?
Yeah, I had conversations with all 5 of you about this.
So I just want to make sure that we're clear that we have a process, and this goes back to our process conversation about when we want future agenda items and things to come before the board, there's a process for it.
My comment to Mr. Baer was very straightforward. I'm not putting anything on the agenda. If he wants to bring it under open discussion, that's what he's doing here today.
Right. I'm just saying that that's a fabulous workaround our process. And so in the future, I'll just, if that's what an option is to do that, then that's what.
That wasn't a workaround. That
Okay.
was Mr. Baer asking questions, and I think I would answer anybody's questions.
Okay.
I'm here as a citizen and I think somewhat of a community leader, presenting ideas that individuals have told the county they want in the mechanism the county set up to get feedback from the community. And so the very clear mechanism for do that. And it's not just our idea. These ballot referendums are going on throughout the entire state. I provide you a list of 5 of them in the back of my packet. There's probably 20 of them that have been done through 2020 and proposed in this 2022 cycle, all of which are, the majority of which are some combination of bond or non-bond millage rate. Yeah.
Are you done asking questions, Commissioner Lockhart?
For right now.
Okay. Commissioner Herr, then Commissioner Constantine.
So I do not disagree with the concept, but when Mr. Baer and I spoke, I think it was earlier this week or late last week, I questioned, why are we doing this during the 3 minutes? Because that seemed out of sync with how you would bring such a critical issue forward for the citizens in the county. I think generally this sets a precedent that I am uncomfortable with. My position with regard, and I know we can create great distinction between this and the gambling request for putting something, zipping it right through to the ballot and bypassing the signature process, is the same. The signature process is actually a very valid part of the process because it creates the base that wants to support your referendum. I think you have belief that that's not needed. I would also tell you that from a point of order, this is 3 or 6 minutes. This isn't a debate and a discussion, so that's not the portion of the meeting that we're in. I'm uncomfortable there. we're opening ourselves up to a significant differential in terms of future requests for ballot referendums to be zipped right through to the ballot, regardless of how legitimate your request is and how wonderful the request is. There's a bigger picture issue here. I would also tell you there's a bigger picture issue here when you start talking about one little piece of a tax code, and I'm going to do this for this one issue. Well, what's to stop the next 22 people with an issue coming through and asking for 0.2 mils? I just don't think this is the way we should do this. And quite frankly, I think the request for you to come and do it this way, I just disagree with that entire methodology. So I'm at a no based on process, not based on what you're asking for, to be very, very clear. And I realize that you want to do this as soon as possible. I think it has a bigger impact in the community in terms of other taxation issues that may come up. This may end up costing us dearly.
If I can just have 5 seconds. What I'm
No.
asking is for
Point of order.
agenda.
We'll get back to you, Mr. Bear. Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you. Commissioner Herr, Commissioner Lockhart, I respect what you're having to say, your opinion on this. I'm looking at it, I guess, from a different perspective. I recall when the casino folks came up here at the end of a meeting, which is pretty much the same as what we're doing right now, and asked for it to come forth at the next meeting. As much as we liked or disliked the idea, we said, okay. We agreed to it. We agreed to allow them to come back and state their case. And I think that's what Mr. Bear is asking here today. He's not asking us to approve to put this on the ballot. He's asking us to consider, after the staff looks at it, the staff looks at the language, the staff brings back this at an appropriate time, which I believe you asked for at the second meeting in July. It may not necessarily be July, but I think that there is a time frame to get it on the ballot. So, but I think at the very least, we need to give our own citizens the same kind of respect as we did the casino folks when they asked to put this on the ballot and to decide it one way or another. This, that was something that had never been, quite frankly, discussed before, and there is a clear difference between that and something that's coming up of a program that we did before, of a program that our staff has discussed the need for in the past. And the fact is that the $488 million that is now available from the state funds for conservation land, if the local government has a program to participate. So I'm not suggesting, I think you all would know that I'm a big fan of conservation land. I think we all are. I also remember that during the pandemic, one of the things that we were so excited about is the 600-plus percentage increase in the use of our public lands. So the fact of the matter is, I question whether this is the right time. With all going on, the increase in the inflation, the stock market going kaput, and everything else, as to whether our citizens would be as inclined to do this or not. But that's not what Mr. Bear is asking today. What Mr. Bear and his folks are asking today is us to consider putting on the ballot after staff reviews it at the next meeting and allow them to give their case for that. The education piece that I was critical for me in the casinos was, that was something that was fresh, new. This is something we've done before, so I don't think we need the education process that we had when that we needed when putting on the casino. This would be something that I think that the citizens that are presenting this to us are going to have to sell to the public. And so for me, I am more than happy to give them the chance, just as we did with the casino folks, or whatever you want to call them, to come in and to state their case at the next meeting after the staff has looked it over.
Thank you, Commissioner Constantine. Commissioner Zimbauer.
Thank you, Commissioner Constantine. I won't go into all the details, but that's exactly what my support recommendation would be. Is they've requested for staff to vet it. They've requested to come back to us by July 28th. I as well am very concerned about any tax increases. And so I inquire with Commissioner Lockhart, if staff vets this process, help me understand your concern in that regard. If the citizens of this county have the ability to decide whether they want to do something or not, including tax themselves to purchase natural lands. I'm trying to follow, and I understand your conservative nature as well as mine, but if the citizens themselves, if they have that capability of making that decision, that's not a decision I'm making, or you're making, or this board's making. They have the ability to make that decision themselves. But for clarity, all I was indicating was I'm happy for staff to come back on the 28th, do the vetting process, tell us, give us an overview, tell us the whys, the why nots, what's good, what's bad, what should happen, what shouldn't happen, and go from there. I would not move to put this, obviously on the ballot during discussion today.
Okay, I'd like to just add a little bit because it was alluded to that I was circumventing the process. When Highlight came to us, I don't remember what month it was, Mr. Applegate, I don't remember, several months ago, they came to me and asked for me to put it on the agenda. I met with staff, and at that point, I said, if you really want to talk to the board, come under the open discussion, which is this time in the meeting, to bring it to the board. That's what they did. Mr. Barrett came to me as well. I did not ask staff to work on this, and I think Mr. Applegate said that as well. And I also told Mr. Barrett that if he believes in this program, just like I told Highlight to come in front of the board under their 3 minutes or 6 minutes, that's what I've asked him to do as well. That's what he's here today. I'm not trying to circumvent the process. I'm just giving a citizen his 3 or 6 minutes, depending upon what position they hold. I did not want to put it on the agenda until I heard from this board. I will tell you that I'd like to hear more about this. I have no problem putting it on the agenda, but I want to know if there's consensus. But I did not try to circumvent the process. I think we're giving the citizen, Mr. Bear and his organization, the due process that we gave Highlight, and I have no problem speaking to the board about that today.
Well, I appreciate very much you saying that, and if that's how you say it happened,
I
and
did
that's how
not
it
tell
happened.
staff to look at it. I didn't tell staff to spend any time on it. In fact,
Mr. Chairman.
we spent very little time on this.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the request of the citizen.
Okay, there's a motion to put this on the
Second.
agenda. There's a second. Any other discussion?
I'll just say that we have just finished saying that we're not going to add any more to our staff right now with everything going on, and now we're going to add more to our staff under a very short time constraint. So we say one thing and then we do another. So we've got to figure out what it is we're doing.
Well, and I will say that I think that, Mr. Chairman, that this is the course of normal business. This is citizens asking us to do something. This is the core. This is not throwing things on them. I do not see this as something that's going to take hours and hours and hours. But again, I leave that to the CEO. If he tells us that he can't do this and he needs other help, so be it. But again, this is the course of normal work.
And it's the reason why I'm going to ask Mr. Applegate. Mr. Applegate, do you believe you and your staff has the
Well, I'm going
ability?
to ask for a clarification on the motion because this would involve, it's more than just simply approving language. I would recommend, if we're going to follow our procedure that you all have clearly instructed staff over the last few years, before we do any work on this, including trying to draft an ordinance, doing the research, all those things, I would say at that next discussion that you have with the citizens, then instruct us one way or the other, either stand down or proceed forward. But until then, I think to follow the process that you've established, if you, as Commissioner Constantine said, the request is to come back before the board at a regular meeting, make the pitch, or whatever you want to, the words that you use.
Yes. Make their case.
Make their case. At that point, and only at that point, would staff begin working on drafting the appropriate ordinance and those kind of things.
Commissioner Herr.
I think it goes well beyond the drafting of the appropriate ordinance. And by the way, I love what you just said. Put the whole thing, put all of the work of the staff on hold until we come back. If we're just, this is a methodology for asking for a future board item, okay. But there's going to have to be significant research as to what the impact of putting this on the agenda is, on the ballot is with regard to the penny, with regard to anything else that funds the entire rest of the operation. And so that is not a light lift. This isn't just about checking out the ordinance. I realize I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, okay,
I'm just spelling it out a little more clearly.
I failed to mention those things before.
Yes.
Commissioner Herr. Commissioner Lockhart, excuse me.
So, from my recollection, and I know Mr. Durr wasn't here on staff during the natural lands referendum, but he's been, the recipient of that department since that time. There was a considerable amount of time, effort, and energy. There were entire staff positions that were created. The county attorney's office had an incredible amount of time and added to them, because you're talking about purchasing and negotiating land. You're identifying parcels. You're going to be talking. This is a whole new natural lands purchasing program, from what I understand. And that comes with it, and a whole nother initiative to be adding to this county. We have so benefited so much from the work that was done decades ago when we had that program. Is this the right time? I can look at my calendar and talk, it's like, it took 18 months to 2 years to get the whole program together last time, and we're talking about throwing this together in a few months. I'm just not sure that we'll get the best outcome. And I think we need to think about the penny sales tax, and if this can be incorporated into that initiative. Why wouldn't we contemplate doing that instead of putting an additional property tax burden on our citizens? I feel like there's so much more we could be exploring as a board. Not to say that your suggestion is a bad suggestion or that it's not the right thing to do, but our job is to vet all of those things. Commissioner Zembauer, you asked me why I wouldn't just do it, because there are so many parts and pieces that go into being in this position and making these decisions. And sometimes, there are decisions that make people unhappy. And sometimes it takes asking a few more questions and taking a little more time. And I'm happy to do that. We may get to this outcome, but I'm just not the kind of person in what I think is my responsibility to not just throw something out there on the ballot, because there are potential ramifications and consequences from it. And we deserve, and our citizens deserve, to have that fully vetted before we vote on that. And I don't think we're going to get that in the next month, my personal opinion.
Any other discussion? Mr. Bear, I appreciate you bringing this forward. I'm going to call the question since we have a motion on the floor. All in favor of presenting this on the agenda for the next meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign?
No.
Motion passes 3-2. Thank you. Mr. Applegate, you need any additional information on that?
Just with the understanding of what I said, that it's only going to be on the agenda for
You made the
discussion.
clarification.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can, I think the Commissioner, her and Commissioner Lockhart made very good points. And so did you, Mr. Applegate. But I wanted to clarify, I don't think that we're sitting here and asking you to write an ordinance and to do the research or anything else. What I'm saying is the request was that we put it on the ballot for discussion at the next meeting.
For the agenda.
Agenda, excuse me, you're right. Agenda for the next meeting, or the 28th of July. and that at that time, we will discuss the pros and cons of that as to whether or not to put it on the ballot. I do know that we already have certain information that is available because Mr. Durr did a lot of research on this and still has identified lands and other things that are, potential. So I think that we will have some information in front of us, but we're not asking you all to go out and do an ordinance or anything else like that. So I just wanted to make that clear, as they're going to have to make the presentation to sell it.
That's correct, just like they did with Highlight.
Just like the Highlight did, yes.
Mr. Chairman, just one small point of clarification. The second meeting in July is July 26th, not the 28th. I just want, just for the record, to be clear.
Yeah. Thank you.
I will modify the motion.
Do we need to modify the motion?
I think you just said bring it back in July, so I don't think there was a specific date, but that date of the second meeting in July is July 26th.
Thank you. Janie, next request?
We only have one meeting in July.
That's correct.
Okay. Rob Elliott. You have to ask the chairman. Just ask the chairman.
Good afternoon. I represent a group, so if I could have 6 minutes, I would mostly.
Which group do you represent, sir?
Willow Creek Church.
Okay. You'll have 6 minutes.
Thank you, sir. My name is Rob Elliott. I am representing Willow Creek Presbyterian Church located at 4725 East Lake Drive in Winter Springs, Florida, 32708. I'm here on behalf of the pastors, elders, and deacons of Willow Creek, as well as the 500 members, the 100 families attending our preschool, and other entities such as basketball leagues. Willow Creek has been a positive and influential member of Seminole County for over 34 years. Last year, we suffered a windstorm damage to our two-story education building. We had our roof inspected and a $35,000 estimate was created for replacement. We engaged the services of a contractor and verified the contractor was properly licensed and insured. This building is used year-round for preschool, vacation Bible school, summer camp, youth groups, and other entities involving children. So we requested the work be performed during Thanksgiving week of 2021. A permit was obtained, and the work was completed during Thanksgiving week. An in-progress inspection was set for the Friday after Thanksgiving. Because this was a holiday, the contractor did not contact the county and request an after-hour inspection, so it never occurred. A subcontractor completed the roof and photographed the work, and we now know that Seminole County does not permit this type of practice in photographing work. Since the in-progress inspection was not completed, the building department refused to finalize the permit. This open permit will cause Willow Creek Church difficulty when we renegotiate our mortgage. We contacted Commissioner Delary and asked if he would facilitate a meeting between our church and the building department. We met with the building department official Pike in Commissioner Delary's chambers on 2 occasions. Mr. Pike informed us our contractor had prior issues complying with the proper procedure in the permitting process. We told Mr. Pike we understood the situation, however, Willow Creek was caught in the middle and should not be penalized for the improper actions of a contractor. Mr. Pike said the only remedy was for the contractor to remove the properly installed roof and reinstall a new roof. Mr. Pike refused to finalize our permit. The use of this building is not conducive to re-roofing other than when there is a period wherein the building is not being utilized. The rainy season is upon us, and removing the roof could cause damage to the interior of the building. We requested the contractor hire a professional engineer to verify it was properly installed. The engineer report states, quote, "In summary, we are of the professional opinion that the roofing system installed in the building in question is in compliance to meet the roof in progress and roof final inspection requirements of the Florida Building Code." Willow Creek was informed our contractor had violated the building department 3-strike rule. Willow Creek requested documentation as to this 3-strike rule. Mr. Pike indicated no documentation existed, but he could create the documentation. We made an open records request for documentation surrounding this 3-strike rule, including a copy of the rule, as well as all contracting entities who were subject to the 1, 2, or 3 strikes, as well as any action taken on the part of Seminole County against any entity violating the 3-strike rule. Willow Creek received a memo surrounding the three-strike rule that contained syntax and spelling errors. The May 27th memo refers to numerous administrative codes which reference situations such as this. We also received a form showing the contractor we engaged had 6 permit violations. According to the Seminole County Municipal Code, a board of contractor examiners exists to investigate the actions of licensed contractors. It appears there are numerous references to actions against a contractor, but nothing punitive mentioned towards the owner of the job address. Willow Creek requests documentation as to when this board last met and if the permit issued for the work at Willow Creek was discussed. We have learned this has been turned over to the county legal department. We are at a loss as to why this is a legal issue for the county. We have a properly installed roof as evidenced by a professional engineer who inspected the roof. This is a policy and procedure issue and has nothing to do with the roof itself. It seems Willow Creek is being singled out by the building department in order to cause hardship for the contractor. Willow Creek is being weaponized by the building department, and the actions of the building department border on abuse of power. We question if this involves all churches, just Presbyterian churches, or possibly just Willow Creek Presbyterian Church alone. We are caught in the middle of this conflict between the contractor and the building department. The building department appears to have taken punitive action against the contractor, so it does not make sense this permit cannot be finalized, so Willow Creek can be removed from the situation and not cause issues when we attempt to refinance our debt. Thank you.
Commissioners, the gentleman before us is correct. I did meet with him and his several other people, not once, but I believe twice, correct? Yes. We met twice. And I think it was important that I had the county attorney and county manager. County manager, Ms. Applegate, was on the phone. Is that correct, Ms. Applegate? One of the meetings. One, you were present, the other one, you're on the phone. This is truly a building department issue and a legal issue. I cannot direct the building department to do things, as we all know that. And so that's why I asked Mr. Chipak to get with the building department and to find out what their options are. Mr. Chipak, that's the only reason why I referred to Mr. Chipak.
Yes, and at this time, in working with the building department, and Mr. Pike is here if you have any direct questions for him, but the summary of the matter is the building permit is open, okay? Mr. Pike is willing to keep the building permit open until November, over the Thanksgiving holiday, so work can again occur over this Thanksgiving holiday. And we do have an email from the subcontracting company and the contractor that they will be replacing the roof at no cost to the church. So the matter can be brought to conclusion, but it will take time for the work to occur in November when the school is closed in accordance with the church's wishes. And that's the current status of the matter.
What other information, Mr. Chipak, do you think we should be obtaining so that the rest of the board can be fully brought up to speed?
I would ask that question to the board. What additional information do you need?
Commissioner Herr?
I heard two different things, but in all honesty, I've dug into the candy basket because I'm starving, and so maybe I'm not thinking clearly, but I didn't hear that the roofer had agreed that there was something wrong with the roof and they were going to replace it free of charge. What I heard was that there was a separate engineering review that said the roof is installed perfectly. So the disconnect could be in my head. I'll just own that. So can we provide clarity around that?
I would refer that to Mr. Bob Pike, our building official.
For the record, I'm Bob Pike, building official, Seminole County. I am happy to be here today to state the county's stance on this. This is a building code issue. The contractor failed to get his inspection. He completed the work, and he's done this numerous times. So I have reached out to the contractor. we have a very good policies and procedures regarding these issues, because sometimes contractors miss their inspections. We understand that the first time. Second time it happens, we accept an affidavit. The third time, we require, second time, first time's affidavit, second time is a third-party design professional come out. We're giving them options. And then the third time, this is repetitive. You need your inspection, and this is actually supposed to happen the first time. But we give them options as we have that ability, and we work with contractors. We've never had any complaints. This contractor is more than willing to do what he's needed to do. He's willing to tear it off at no cost to the church. We met with the churchgoers, and we understand their situation. We're willing to leave the permit open, and I will extend it at no charge, so they can do it again and around Thanksgiving. So we are more than accommodating and helping them. I just received an email stating that they're in impasse with the church. Now, there was a comment about an engineering report. They went on their own to get a third-party design professional, engineering firm, to open up a spot. I had myself and my chief looked at that, and it's a small area, and we did find code violations in that. There were nailing issues in the underlayment that weren't there, and also at the eave drip. There were nailing issues on the eave drip, and also sealing of the eave drip, what the code requires. The code requires this for reasons. They have to be tested for wind. As you know, we're in Florida, high wind. We get hurricanes. And if the underlayment goes off, you're getting mass flooding into your building. So their codes are there for reasons. They were mandated by the state of Florida to do these inspections. And so I think we do a great job at it. We have a great team of doing it. And I've even opened up to other building officials how we handle this. And they said, wow, that's great what you guys are doing. You're very fair. I've even reached out to the technical director of the Central Florida Roofing and Sheet Metal Association, and he says we are very fair in how we're handling these issues, because every day we're involved with contractors covering up work and not getting their inspections. And we're mandated to make sure that we're enforcing the minimum of the code, and this is what this is. This is a building code issue. What it is a civil issue between the church and the contractor. And the contractor is not here, but he did send me an email stating, Bob, can we leave the permit open? I have not responded yet, because he's saying that they're in impasse with the church. So I don't get involved in those issues, but I'm more than willing to help, as we always have been. So this is a building code issue that the contractor is not getting done. So I have actually reached out to him personally and put him on notice if he continues. And he said he wasn't aware that they were not getting these inspections, but he's going to get that cleaned up, and thanked us very much for reaching out to him, because this is the 5th time that this has happened with this particular contractor.
Commissioner?
So that, again, doesn't sound like there's been an offer and acceptance. We're using the word impasse, you're using the word, they've agreed. And so I still think there's discrepancy. And then follow-up question to that is, if they're multi-time violators and we have a rule where there's a 3-strike rule, why are they still allowed to contract in the county?
I'm sorry, rephrase that again?
Why are they still allowed to contract in the county?
Well, we do have a trades board, and I put him on notice. We do a lot of inspections. There's a lot of permits here. And as you know, we've been inundated the last 2 years with a lot of permits. We've had record years here. So I have reached out to him. He assures me, and he's aware, that he's getting that corrected. I told him we're going to bring him before the trades board if it happens again, and I'm going to file a complaint on his license to DBPR. He assured me that will not happen. So,
Mr. Chipak?
Let me phrase it like this. There are several entities involved, okay? There is our building official and building department, who is charged with and responsible for making sure the work is done correctly and performing the inspections. There is the contractor who did not follow proper procedure, and then there is the church who hired the contractor with the intention that the contractor was going to follow proper procedure and get the work done. The way to rectify the situation, according to our building official, who is charged under state statutes with the authority to administer the building code, has determined that it is required that the roof be removed and replaced in this particular situation. The church has said that previously they had the work done over November when there were no children there, so it wouldn't be a hazard to the children. In contacting the contractor, the building department has received correspondence from the contractor that the contractor is willing to redo the roof at no cost to the church and to also do the work in November. In response to that, the building official has said he is willing to keep the permits open so that the work can occur in November and be properly inspected. That will resolve the situation totally. The church, at this point in time, I believe just wants us to ignore that and to ignore the building code and the inspection requirements and just approve their roof. They said that they want to go for refinancing, but they have not given us a schedule. But again, if they are going to refinance after November, this should not be an issue to the church.
Commissioner Zimbauer, then Commissioner Lockhart.
So this truly does sound like a civil matter, number one. But my question may be for Mr. Parker, County Attorney. I think I've heard the church, I assume we're elders. Is there a process in which an entity can hire an engineering firm to sign off and assume that liability? I know oftentimes, like with septic tanks, we've had in my district that there's a certain code that has to be met, but if a engineer of proper licensing can say, well, this will work and function, I'll sign off on it, we accept that. Is that something different with this? And I don't know. I think this comes down to a liability issue, for the cost of a roof should it not be done right and it come off and fall apart and et cetera. It sounds like the church, at least on the face, is happy with the engineering analysis of someone they've hired, but can they truly assume that liability and circumvent the code? I don't know the question or the answer to that. That's why I'm inquiring.
And Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but under the Florida Building Code, there is the ability to have third-party inspections, but there are requirements that you have to make arrangements for those third-party inspections before the fact, not after the fact. And in this particular situation, the church, on its own volition, went out and got the third-party inspector to do the work after the fact, gave that to the building department, and as Mr. Pike has already stated, in reviewing that report, there are noticed deficiencies in the evidence that was presented along with the report, in the photographic evidence of on the eaves and on the nailings that were not consistent with code.
Correct.
Commissioner Lockhart.
Could I ask one of the gentlemen from the church to come back up? I have
Absolutely.
a question. And forgive me, I didn't write your name down when you introduced yourself. But I know you're a deacon, because in the PCA, deacons handle the building.
That's right. My name is Rob Elliott.
Thank you. I apologize. So you're looking to refinance. I think that's what aside from the structural integrity of the roof and needing this permit tightened up, wrapped up, is it because of the refinancing that you're attempting to go through that you need to have this permit closed before you can do that?
That's correct.
Okay. And when is it that you are planning to refinance?
I can't tell you for sure. I don't know. I'd have to check with the elders.
Okay. Well, so part of it is maybe, well, the elders are here and the deacons are here and they do different things. So maybe, find out from them what that time frame is. But if there is a way to well, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what your solution would be at this point. And from our perspective, does this board have a policy that says 3 strikes and you're out? I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I'm just wondering, is that something that we have? Do we have a 3 strikes and you're out policy for building?
That, the building code and is delegated under state statute to the building official. So the implementation of that is within the jurisdiction of the building official. So is there a specific 3-strike policy that this board has legislated? I believe the answer to that is no.
Okay. But it was within the building official's purview to implement it in whatever fashion, but it might be a good idea that whatever we're implementing, we have in writing so that everyone can kind of follow along?
We could reduce that to an administrative code policy, yes.
Okay. So I'm trying to, so your contractor that you've used, have they told you that they're willing to redo the roof at no cost?
The contractor, they're the ones that actually hired the engineer. We did not. They hired the engineer.
Okay.
And so this engineering study seems to have come into question based on my understanding, which would be photographic evidence, which seems contradictory when the county doesn't accept photographic evidence. So you won't accept photographic evidence to approve a roof, but you'll accept photographic evidence to debunk an engineering report. That seems inconsistent to me, but I guess that's just another issue. But yeah, they've been willing to. The problem is we've already gone through. You have to understand this building. It's primarily a preschool. No matter how hard they try, there's nails all over our playground. We really don't want to go through this again. We understand the county saying, yeah, we'll leave the permit open. We understand the contractor says, yeah, we'll tear off a perfectly good roof and put another roof on. We understand all that, but there's a reality to the situation. And that's our campus. It's a building that's used right now. There's a summer camp, and then as soon as that's over, Vacation Bible School starts. And these are all little kids, and our playground is right adjacent to this building.
Right.
And between the nails and everything else going, it's a policy and procedure and administrative situation that can be solved by a signature. And I understand that doesn't go quite with all the rules that are out there, but there does come a time to just use common sense.
So my only other follow-up, and I'm so sorry that you're dealing with this for so many reasons, but we do have a contractors licensing board, contractors examiner board, whatever you want to call it. And we've had discussions about that board here because each one of us has an appointee on that board. And every time I ask my appointees, so have you met? It goes back years and years and years and years. They just don't meet. And one of the frustrations of one of my appointees is that they would like to meet because there are complaints in this community and there are issues in this community that they would like to have brought before the board, but the board has never convened. So what does this board have in terms of the ability to say, convene the board that we appoint people on to deal with circumstances like this, and not to usurp Mr. Pike's authority, but to, the board exists for a reason, but we don't ever convene it. So this I think, is a result of that, potentially. And so we need to fix that. And I know that doesn't fix your problem, but it's definitely it's in play here. It's part of the reason why we're here.
You're correct, Commissioner, that is part of the reason, and I'm not disagreeing with that. But that's not the issue at hand, okay? The issue at hand is the church has an issue with the roof because of the contractor, and there's an issue with the open building permit. I don't feel as if I have the authority or should be dictating to the building official, or do we have that? We don't have that ability to, and that's when I spoke to the county attorney, and that's where we're at. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Commissioner Herr.
So For better or worse, one of the reasons that I ran for this position is because of a roof situation in my
Here we
own
are.
home, just so we all know, and I've been fairly public about that. I do think the request for further consideration about that needs to come back to this board at some point in time, after we hire a county manager. But with regard to attempting to resolve this situation, the photographic evidence, we didn't like the photographic evidence. Is it not possible to take off a portion of the roof to do the inspection now, as opposed to re-roofing the whole thing?
That'd be up to Mr. Pike to discuss. Mr. Pike?
Again, for the record, Bob Pike, building official, Seminole County. We looked at that, even though this is a repeat offender. He has not gotten his inspections. The roof, again, is completed. We have no idea what's underneath it, other than except for the engineering report that shows that there are code violations in that, even
So
though
let
the
me restate
engineer
my
is saying
question.
that.
Just to be clear, let me restate my question. Is it not possible, is this a shingle roof?
It is a shingle roof.
Is it not possible to remove shingles, to whatever degree you need to remove shingles, to do an inspection? I realize it's a retrofit. The fact that he is a repeat offender and they were allowed to hire him is on us. We didn't convene the board, we didn't pull a license, that's on us. So from my perspective, the question stands, is it possible, and I'm not trying to usurp authority, I'm simply trying to come to a conclusion that we've done every single thing possible to accommodate citizens that got stuck in a situation. It's a shingle roof. We remove shingles all the time off of shingle roofs.
Okay. The two-part question is, one is the board being convened. We've done a great job in not having to convene the board.
That wasn't the question. I have a one-part question.
Okay.
The one-part question is, can we remove a portion of the roof for you to do an inspection, as though the portion that violated the in-time inspection can be done now?
You can certainly remove shingles. That's what it needs to have for an inspection. We've done that with the contractor several times. We've taken an affidavit to begin with. We've also opened up stuff the first time. We've also had a third party we've accepted. The issue is he's consistent and we're not getting, it's a building code requirement. We can take the shingles off, but if we're being inconsistent in enforcing of the code, then all the contractors are going to find that out, and you're going to be back here again and again and again dealing with the same situation.
So the question now for legal is, we're already inconsistent.
I'd have to ask.
So we
I would have to ask the legal department if that's the case.
Yeah, I am asking that question. It appears as though we're inconsistent if we've already taken affidavits and we're drawing the line here on inconsistency. Comfort level with that?
The jurisdiction of the building code is squarely in the building official, because it's a very technical code and technical implementation of that code. The Board of County Commissioners does not have usurping authority of the board of the building official's authority. Appeals of the board of the building official go to a state agency. Okay, so in this point in time, the question you asked of Mr. Pike is, could we do that? Is it technically possible? That's for him to do, but again, it's within his discretion. The policy that he institutes of taking the affidavit and taking the second strike and third strike, again, is within the realm of being reasonable, okay? And it has, in court, it has not been tested, but it appears to be a reasonable way to draw it. Now, unfortunately, when somebody breaks it more than 3 times, this is the result. and leads us to this difficult situation. But again, we do have a process in place, and we are being consistent with the application of that process.
Commissioner Zimbauer.
I know we could discuss this for hours.
Yes, we can.
But I think what I'm hearing is this board has no jurisdiction to remedy this problem.
That's correct.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
So we can talk about this for the next 20 days, and it's just talk. It's a civil matter, and I'm totally not comfortable that it lands on the county on who decides to hire a contractor for any certain purpose or any business in this county, especially when contracting, when the state can't even control who has a license and who's conducting business. So I guess my question is, what is it that we're being asked to do as a board to remedy or assist this process? If I'm hearing, we cannot override our building official.
Correct.
That's true.
True.
We cannot mandate that two private entities somehow arrive at some kind of agreement. So I'm not sure what else we can accommodate. If my fellow commissioners want to talk about it for a good long time, we can do that. I mean, I understand we've had conversations about the trades board. That's a matter. I think it's outside of this. But if we're trying to reach some resolution for the church, our building department, and this board, I guess my specific question to council is, what is it that you want from us to give direction or be able to give direction in this matter?
I believe the citizen's request was essentially tell the building official to issue the permit. And again, as you properly stated, you don't have the authority to do that. So that's, in a nutshell, that's where we are right now.
So following up on that, as a matter of policy and procedure, shouldn't this be a future agenda item request of this board, like the last request?
No, because we have no jurisdiction.
If we were going to go down that path, we don't have any jurisdiction. That's my point. Why are we continuing to have this
The
discussion?
only question that I would have with Mr. Pike is that, obviously, you've made your ruling. I understand what your ruling is. I'm not saying I agree or disagree.
Sure.
You have the ability to make that ruling. Does the church have the ability to go to the state building official to appeal it?
They can certainly appeal my decision to the board.
Which board?
That is the state of Florida, the Florida Building Commission.
Okay, that's my point.
This is a building code issue on missed inspections, so I don't know how that would work in that realm, knowing that they are at fault, the contractor's at fault, and the contractor is willing to remedy the situation. He was more than happy that we called and talked to him about it, because we were being told that they had run off with the job. And I said, well, I'll reach out to the guy. So I was very happy that the license holder called me and had a really good conversation, that he wasn't aware what was going on, but he was going to correct that, and he's more than willing to do the roof again. The third-party engineering report that was submitted, we did look at, because I try to go every way possible to try to help. As you know, we do this all the time. We offer solutions and options and let those people make those decisions, whether it be the contractor or the designer or the owner, depending on who owns the permit. But the report showed that there were some issues with the underlayment fastening and also the drip edge nailing, and also the sealing of where that drip edge goes over the underlayment has to be sealed, or you're going to have water running in there. So we don't have anything to say that it looks good. Now, Commissioner Hurd asked me, certainly we can remove shingles, but we can continue to do this day in and day out. At some point, when are we going to make the contractor accountable? So it's a building code issue. The contractor is willing to correct it. We have already been down that road of opening shingles with this contractor. When you open up a roof, it's never good to open it, because that just opens up an avenue for possible leaks. So we can certainly do that, but with the pictures that we've seen in the report, it is suspect. So at what point are we going to say enough's enough? You know, do we, that is my question. We have a job to do. We're mandated by the state of Florida to enforce just the minimum code. The minimum code is to have an in-progress inspection, and we do a great job at it. We went to the board, we went to the Central Florida Roofing Association in Goba and had a joint on how we do these things. They loved ours the way we decided to reinstitute that back in 2019 because the previous building official had gotten rid of the in-progress inspection because of the volume and not having enough staff to cover the inspections. And I told him,
Mr.
"No, that's
Chipok,
not a great idea." And we were inundated with leaky roof complaints from owners. So we went back to the in-progress inspection. It works well. But if the contractors don't do what they're required to do as a contractor to get their inspections, we can't ensure that they're meeting code and making sure that their roof is not going to be leaking.
Mr. Pike.
And it's going to hang on there during a storm meeting minimum code.
Mr. Pike, if you just give me 1 minute here.
Sure.
Mr. Chipok?
Yes, sir.
What are our options here today? That's the bottom line. Let's get the answers.
Again, from the church's request is to override the building official and have the permit be issued. You do not have the authority to do that.
The gentlemen are shaking their heads for the record that they don't agree that that is the request. So would you like to clarify the request if what was just stated was incorrect? I'm sorry, Mr. Delary, but I
That's
don't know
all
if
right.
you saw that.
I would eventually go back to them, but
Just for a little point of clarification, I am currently involved as a duly elected official in a municipal entity within Seminole County. So I understand the rules and procedures. I understand that you have no authority to change anything here. I'm here to let you know what happened.
okay.
I'm here to let you know how we've been treated. The 2 times we met, and I could be mistaken, but the tone we received was, in my mind, very condescending. The first conversation we had with the building department looked at me and our building maintenance facility manager, and the comment was, "I'm not saying a word till I know who these 2 guys are." No introduction, no shaking of hands, nothing like that. This whole experience has been extremely negative. There's been no support, well, how can we fix this? It's all been, how do I get back at this contractor? We're caught in the middle. We're just stuck in the middle. That's why I said we've been weaponized against this contractor. We're going to make him tear a roof off and put a roof on and cost him money. We're going to show him. That's what we're seeing. I know you guys can't do anything. I'm here just to let you know what experience we had with your building department and how we've been treated. And I don't think it's been a great reflection on what your county wants to see. So if we have to have the roof torn off, so be it. But that's affecting us as a means to get back at this contractor. And that's why I'm here. I'm fully aware in my conversation with Mr. Delary, I knew that. I really appreciate Bob facilitating these 2 meetings. But yeah, I'm here because I think you guys need to know what's gone on with the situation, and I don't know where Mr. Chipok came up with the fact that I wanted you to override the authority of Mr. Pike. That's never been discussed.
Duly noted, Rob. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And thank you for that clarification if I misunderstood.
Any other comments from the board? Commissioner Herr.
Yep. So the question is, what can we do? And I'd be perfectly willing to share my perspective. My perspective is that we have an obligation to do everything we can possibly do to rectify situations. And drawing a hard line in the sand is exceptionally uncomfortable to me, given that that line in the sand didn't exist in the previous iterations. So what can we do? I think we can lend perspective to the building inspector to say, this doesn't feel good, it doesn't sound good, and it sure as heck doesn't have a great outcome for anybody in this situation, including the county. So I would just lend that there, as I said this morning, there may be opportunities for reconsidering how we're doing this today and this situation to figure out how we rectify. It's my perspective.
Any other comments before we move on? Thank you very much, Mr. Pike. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
If I may speak one more time?
Go right ahead, Mr. Pike, and then we're going to move on to the next item.
Yes, sir. As you remember, we were in that meeting, and I think we were more than professional in how we handled ourselves. We're not out to punish anybody. We're in the business of meeting minimum code requirements, and we go out of our way to give options and help. We've done this over and over. This roof is not showing that it's meeting any code with their third-party report, and the contractor continues to miss inspections, but we're dealing with that. So Commissioner Hurd asked, sure, we can take shingles off. At what point, where are we going? Do we do a section of it, and then if it's not correct, make them take the whole roof off? Or do we do half the roof? I mean, this is a tough situation we're dealing with the volume and the contractors that we're dealing with. We don't like taking roofs off, and that's why we're enforcement of the code, and that's enforcement. And that's, we're
And Mr.
bound to
Pike,
do
I will
that.
also say, in my office, everyone was very professional, so thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that.
Janie, what's the next written request?
Brian Scholl.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Scholl. I live at 1120 Pheasant Circle, Winter Springs. I am a deacon at Willow Creek Church and also the facility manager. In lieu of the conversation that's gone on, what I wanted to say is a little bit different, but I understand that Mr. Pike was offering a solution to remove the roof come this Thanksgiving vacation to take care of our children so that nothing would happen. The problem I see with that is in the climate of the economy today, we can't guarantee that that roofer is going to be in business at that time. And that could create a real problem with us. So again, we know you don't have the authority over the building department, et cetera, but you do have some influence to understand our situation. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Next,
George Sellery.
Mr. Sellery.
George Sellery, 5231 Shoreline Circle, Sanford. And I do apologize. I know you're all starving. This process is horrible for public residents to be able to say something. Commissioner Lockhart, to something you had mentioned earlier, if you want to save staff tons of time, free up staff, do a development moratorium and save a bunch of people a lot of time. I know that's kind of contrary to making a lot of money, but most of those people don't live here anyway. So the reason I'm in front of you today is because, and I sent you this, and some of you have seen it, some of you haven't, but again, I'm going back to the Winter Park Commission. They listened to the folks, and they took the step to put some stuff on the ballot. We don't need to put a lot of things on the ballot like they did because we do a pretty good job overall. You've done things already with the selling or transferring of lands here, supermajority. The developers wrote the one for the impact fees for the state that was passed so that it's a 4-to-1 supermajority on impact fees. What we are looking at is two of the biggest issues still around. And again, just like 96% support natural lands, which cost about $50 a year on that ballot issue, that they would decide to tax themselves on, not you. The other big issues, developing in a wetland, I don't know of any of you that would even publicly say you support that. Now, again, we're just saying that there should be a higher bar. There's going to be reasons where somebody may have to develop or do something in a wetland. We understand that. We're just saying the bar should be higher. Just like the density requirements, over 25%, there should be something different. I'm not saying to do these as a ballot issue. I'm really not. That's up to you. What I'm saying is you may want to look at doing this as a supermajority ordinance like you've done in the past. It just sets the bar higher. You passed impact fees, I think, unanimously, 5-0.
No, we did not.
You know, and again, I can quote several of you, but, you know, Commissioner Constantine once said in the paper about quality of life. It's all about the quality of life. That's why people move here, is the quality of life. Commissioner Delary in yesterday's paper with the envisioning, it's what the community wants. Not necessarily what you want, but what the community, the public, that you want to vote for you this November for two of you. We're telling you some of the things that are important to us, and we'd like to basically say, let's put the needs of the many over the needs of the few that want to make a bunch of money here in Seminole County, and just set the bar a little bit higher on density and wetlands. And again, like I said, I don't think these would be huge issues. They're not going to be a long time for staff to do. I'd really like to know where my 5 commissioners stand on this, especially the 2 running for election this time. I want to know where you're at so that I can tell everyone. Friends of the Wekiva River supports this. I think Geneva, everybody else, we can bring in a boatload of people to support these issues. They are easy issues. So I know I don't have 6 minutes, and I know you're hungry. I've just been waiting 2 hours for my 3. So I just wanted to bring that up and hopefully see if I can get 3 of you to support, at least starting to look at these from a supermajority ordinance point of view.
Thank you, Ms. Sellery. Commissioner Lockhart.
So I've heard before that 3 minutes is an incredibly short time to be able to get communication across to the board, and it is, which is why all of us are available by phone to set meetings, to have any. I have gone on field trips with Mr. Humphreys. I've had lunch with Ms. Harmon. I've met at a place to have coffee with Mr. Bear. So I've had 2, 4, 5 of you at my home to have meetings and to listen to all of the things that you share. So I think it would be appropriate that if you want us, again, I'm not sure when you emailed this, it was last night because I saw Mr. Humphrey's email at 3 o'clock this morning. This isn't sufficient time for us either. If you really want to talk with us about this and genuinely want to see there be an impact, it has to be two-way time. So please reach out to me at a time when we can actually talk about things and not just have a 3-minute where you're frustrated and we're frustrated.
But I want to bring 100 people in here, Commissioner. How can I bring them in? They're not like a developer.
We're just going down the row here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We're going to address it. I've not met, I've had a conversation on the phone, but I've not met with them.
Yeah, you're welcome to bring as many people as you like. I'm just saying that when we talk about as a community that we want to work together on issues, the best way to work together on issues is to meet and have conversations. You're welcome to bring in as many people as you want. There are probably some points of agreement in here, but again, it was just sent yesterday. You're making a 3-minute presentation. Give your idea the courtesy and the opportunity to really be heard and not just place it in this 3-minute time frame.
Thank you, Commissioner Lockhart. Anyone else? Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you. When we were going through the land development codes at the last couple of times, I brought up the Winter Park charter changes and asked that our staff look at them, and asked Mr. Applegate if we could do them by ordinance, not by charter as Winter Park did. And quite frankly, I think these are 2 of, I think they had 6 charter amendments. These were the 2, I believe, that passed by the largest amount. Mr. Applegate said that we could do it by ordinance. That was when he was still county attorney. But maybe Mr. Chipoff will have a different story, but I don't think so. But, I know that even as early as, or as late as this morning, Rebecca Hammock and I were talking about these charter amendments, and quite frankly, I think that they're reasonable, but I'd also understand what Commissioner Lockhart's saying, because these are things that I have focused on, as far as our land development codes, and I think some others haven't. Mr. Sellery, I respect you a great deal, but you really don't need to come in here and be abrasive to my fellow commissioners, because the fact of the matter is, she's right. To give her the chance to absorb this and take into effect the fact that this is a good idea. I think this is a very good idea. We did what we did with natural lands, and this commission agreed to it. We did that without any prompting. We did it ourselves. You all agreed with it. You came in, supported it. And I think these are things that, again, if we take the time to look at them, I think that the logic of them makes sense. None of us want to build within the wetlands. I would hope not, anyway. 25, and I understand what the request was, but it did just come last night, not because I talked to you, but because I know the charter things. 25% was only in the urban area, and only the supermajority is only if the request that was not in the the urban area, and only if the request was over 25% of what they could do right now. So that means if they could build 50 homes, in this case, it would be like 65 or something if they were coming in. I'm just using that as an example. I don't want to get too into the weeds. But I would just say to you, thank you for this information. I know that, in the development of the land development codes, I know our staff has copies of all this, and they've been looking at it simply because it was something that another community had brought up. And, I can support these things because they're the right things to do. But understand, it's, I'm not criticizing you. I love the idea. But the fact of the matter is that it's the presentation maybe, and saying that I'm working on these things. I'm going to be talking about them in the future, and I think this is a very reasonable group, and we'll be looking at it.
Commissioner Zimbauer?
I don't disagree with what's already been said. I don't think this is a major issue. When I met with our staff on the Vision 2045 for the updated briefing, and with the Land Development Code, I think our staff's already looking at some of these issues. And so I suspect they'll be bringing that to us. The fact that this is not in the core area, I think is beneficial, which would be more in the Wekiva area, outside the core area of the county. And I think Commissioner Constantine brought something up similar to this several meetings ago. And so, again, I don't think this is a huge issue that can't be addressed, and I think we probably will address moving forward.
I'd like to add that Commissioner Constantine did bring up some form of this. I think you did. And I'm hoping and willing to look at it at that time when we redo the Land Development Code, and I think that'd be the appropriate time to do it. But I think these are all very valid, and I believe that our staff is vetting it, and when they bring it back, that you may be seeing some ordinances with this. That's the way I see it.
Thank you.
Next.
Nancy Harmon.
Mr. Chairman, can we figure out how many more speakers?
How many more do we have?
I need to get a lunch break.
I'm going to be very brief.
No problem.
Ms. Harmon is the last speaker for this morning,
Great.
so far. Yeah.
Nope, not quite.
Oh, sorry, one more after her.
Ms. Harmon?
Nancy Harmon, 752 Pioneer Way, Geneva, Florida. I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to thank you for what you do. As I've said to Amy before, Commissioner Lockhart, we don't always agree, but I am willing to have lunch with her. I like to have the conversation. Today, what I found that I'd like to figure out how we can do this is Commissioner Lockhart's talking about a process. I have no idea what that process is. I feel as a citizen, the way that I get your attention collectively is in this room at this time. I can go visit each one of you, but I don't know what Commissioner Zimbauer feels with regard to what Commissioner Lockhart has to say about it. This is the only opportunity we have to get you 3 or you 5 in the room punching it out or hugging it out or dancing it out, whatever results from our conversation. So I have to say, forgive us, the citizens, for not understanding a process that we just don't know is written, so that we can approach this board in a way that doesn't appear argumentative, aggressive, and we can do what we do when we get together in the room and we talk, but we do it here. So I'd like that process somewhere to be more clearly articulated. The other thing I have an issue with is when Commissioner Lockhart was talking about the penny tax and Commissioner Herr as well, you know, that tax process, are we, the citizens, going to have a meeting with you all to make a determination of whether it goes on the ballot or not?
There will be a public input and public discussion.
Okay, and when is that going to happen?
We have not decided yet.
Okay, so when is it required to happen to make sure it gets on the board, on the ballot?
There is no time frame.
Okay.
Because that penny sunsets in 2024.
Okay. Oh, okay. So we don't have to worry about that for 2022?
Actually, for 2022, no, because it goes to 2024.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, we're all hungry. Have a good day.
Shani?
Katrina Shaddix.
That's okay. I'm sorry, Commissioner. I am starving. I'm having a low blood sugar thing here, so I had to write stuff down because yes, I do. I'll finish this first because I know we want to get out of here. I'm starving. I'm thirsty. But I promise not to turn hangry when you get angry from being hungry. So Katrina Shaddix, 3287 County Road 426, Geneva, Florida 32732. Thank you for the update on Lake Dot. And I hope it's important to realize and acknowledge that the number of ducks dying decreasing is very good, but it's happening because, like the Northern Indian River Lagoon manatees, the majority of them have already died. So now there's less animals to die. Therefore, the number of ducks dying is decreasing. And yes, the bird flu is diagnosed. However, birds were not tested for herbicide poisoning and exposure, as I requested multiple times. Like us, animals' immune systems can be compromised when they are exposed to or consume herbicide chemicals like those dumped in Lake Dot just days before the wildlife die-off started happening. Compromised immune systems lead to easier contracting the bird flu, people flu, cancer, and death. A scientific study published in March 2021 concluded that Florida manatees are chronically exposed to glyphosate because of application of the pesticide and herbicide to aquatic weeds. Chronic exposure resulted in the majority of manatees testing positive for having glyphosate in their blood. So just to let you know, we found a duck staggering in the road next to Lake Dot. I have that Dot. He's going to the vet. We're going to have blood drawn, and that will be sent to a lab to be tested for the herbicide chemicals. He's still alive, and he's doing better. And then Commissioner Herr, I liked your comment where you said, why is the contractor still allowed to operate in the county? I would like to pose that same question to the county for Pulte Homes, who has been prosecuted and fined multiple times for destroying gopher tortoise burrows and for killing gopher tortoises. I have plenty of proof of the fines that they paid and where they were prosecuted in Florida for doing that. And I would strongly, strongly recommend and ask that they not be allowed to operate in Seminole County. They will continue to do this. And, okay, going on to, also, I think I can get this done in a minute. Y'all would not be accused of raising taxes if you just let the people vote on it. Let us decide to tax ourselves, just like Deer Run community did with taxing themselves with the MSBU to save their green space. We just want to be given that opportunity as well. And we kind of want to make it a fair playing field. We know developers get to come to y'all every single 2 weeks here, multiple times, and ask for what they want. So we hope that, and we appreciate the 3-2 vote, and we hope that y'all understand that we just want an opportunity to give our pitch and to get this on the ballot. And about In case I run out of time, I have 6 minutes as Executive Director of Beverly United, but I'm going to try to finish this up really quick. I'm super hungry, and I'm trembling with hunger right now. In 2017, I sent out a ton of postcards, did a call to action, and it said, please put a land buying initiative on the ballot. And I sent it to the county, and I think Mr. Applegate did call me and said, you have to take the county logo off your postcard because I wasn't the county sent it out. So, so this was, I think, in 2017, but it was a very popular initiative, very popular call to action. We had a group of citizen activists, including Ms. Harmon, I think Debbie Pulalian, Jay Jury, a couple other people, even my environmental attorney came into town from Palm Beach to talk with former Chairman Commissioner Carey about this. Commissioner Carey said that she would get this on the ballot for us without requiring the petitions, which was awesome. We thought this was a huge win. But then the county proceeded to spend $60,000 to phone 300 people to ask their feelings about putting that on the ballot and about parks. Please don't do that again. Please don't pay a consulting firm tens of thousands of dollars to ask them questions. All you have to do is look on social media and see what the people want. The people want the chance to vote for a land buying program. So save your money, and thank you for letting us speak, and let's all fill our stomachs. I'm about to pass out right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shane, anyone else?
No, sir.
Any other requests to speak to the board? Seeing none, we're going to close public input. Before we go into recess, we're beyond our time because we're supposed to be back here at 1 o'clock. I'd like to reconvene. Is 2 o'clock okay? Okay, we'll be back at 2 o'clock. We'll take recess till 2.
Okay.